right, you guys stay safe. All right, so we're just going to get started right away. Mr. Jake Bigelow is going to start us out with enhanced search and seizure. I'll let him introduce himself, even though he really needs no introduction in this round. So really appreciate you coming out and doing it. So
thank you very much.
Shut up for a while and let you do your work. See you.
All right. Appreciate you guys letting me be here. I see a lot of faces from around the state. I've had the luxury of being able to go around the state of Wyoming and teach to a lot of people, so I'm seeing a lot of people here, so thanks for coming here for this. I see the chief sitting here, so I got to tone it down a little bit. All right, so we'll just get into it. So what we've done and what they requested was an enhanced search and seizure block for 4 hours. So it's kind of the advanced search and seizure as well as advanced traffic stops. So I took kind of 2 8-hour classes, combined them into one, and then cut it in half. So I'm going to be mass feeding information to you guys today. I can't spend as much time as I wanted to on certain topics, but I'm open to any questions. You'll have my phone number, email. I get reached out to a lot by people. I'm happy to answer any questions. I also can't stand up here on stage like Craig did yesterday. I got to walk around. I got to move around, and that's really it. So once again, I really appreciate you guys letting me be here and go through this. Real quick, so I've been with Blue to Gold since 2001 teaching. I was lucky enough to get on board. They let me start teaching. It's a great company filled with mostly former law enforcement, current attorneys. So I'm really lucky to be involved on the legal side of it as an active law enforcement officer, not an attorney. I've been in law enforcement in Wyoming since 2013, military before that, and presently a brand new 2-month patrol sergeant. So it's still Velcro. So again, that's why I got to tone it down, because I could not be a sergeant at the end of today, depending on what I say. And then I move around a lot. So I do want to plug the books. I don't make money off of the books. It's not a big one for me. For those of you that have the books or have seen them, you guys would be the biggest testament for it. Rick is outside with the books right now, and he's offering a pretty smoking discount on the small guide, the report writing. At least go look at it and see what it is and decide if you want it. But he is giving you a pretty good discount if you pick up the other two. There's a few Wyoming books left. Highly recommend those. I have them up here too, so if you want to take a look at it beforehand, feel free. Again, we're going to be force feeding a lot of information to you today, but what I want is, if you want to ask some questions, do it. I'm going to limit some of the questions or discussion today because I have a short amount of time, but I'm here all day and I'll be around at breaks so we can have that conversation. Certainly if something's pressing or you really want clarification, I'm more than happy to answer it. All right, there are some scenario questions. Interact with me. I'm looking forward to it, and enjoy it. All right. Some of the disclaimers though. Laws and SOPs can be vastly more restrictive than what case law, what search and seizure says you can do. All right, so at the end of the day, you must follow your SOPs. You must follow the laws that are set for you. What I don't want to hear is, well, I went to a class, Jake Bigelow said I could do this, so chief, your policy's stupid, right? Don't do that. That's not the way you do things, okay? If you have any doubts, run it up the chain, because whether you like it or not, you will follow policies and procedures and take it up your supervisors, okay? And this is legal education, not legal advice. I am not an attorney. Blue to Gold is not a law firm representing you. So advice, or education, not advice. You've got plenty of people you can reach out to for the advice. Those are your district attorneys, city attorneys, so on and so forth, okay? Take pictures. All of these slides have case law associated with them, all right? Relevant case law, swaying case law, 10th Circuit, Wyoming Supreme Court. What I see a lot is people go, oh, I thought it was something different. Everything's cited here. So that's the key thing to remember, is everything is cited, vested, and covered. So if you don't like something, that's okay. I always make a joke and say that case law doesn't care about your feelings. Because people say, well, I feel like that doesn't sound right, or I feel like we shouldn't do that. Case law doesn't care about how you feel. Case law cares about whether or not it is lawful under the Fourth Amendment or it is not. So I would encourage you to push aside your feelings and really open your mind to like what the Wyoming Supreme Court, what the United States Supreme Court, what the 10th Circuit's trying to tell you. Certainly, it opens up a world to criminal interdiction, criminal enforcement, all right? I want to start off, Craig had like 5,000 videos yesterday, him just doing amazing stuff. So I just wanted to build a little street cred right off the bat, all right? So that way you guys know you're dealing with somebody for real, okay? He talked about distancing behavior yesterday. Rapid turn onto a side street, got my attention. And I know this isn't Craig's class, but again, it's hard to follow Craig. Another turn, clearly trying to get away from me. And turn number 3, Failed a signal 100 feet prior to the turn. You have my attention. Slow rolls, pulls over. I'm going to run. I'm not going to run. Maybe I should run. I think I'm going to run. Oh, never mind. I better not run. And my flippies are gone and I'm gone. I got a female running from traffic stop. 7th David. Stop! What are you doing? Get on the ground. Get on the ground. All right, Chief, earmuffs, close your eyes real quick. I don't play around, all right? The real question, since this is a search and seizure class, is did I physically seize that car with my patrol car? Okay, so we started off pretty good. Yes, I did do the crash report, and I got a verbal counseling from, at the time, Lieutenant Trimmel. So luckily, it didn't roll 4 blocks away and crash through a house, so we were good. All right, so the biggest thing today is I want to teach you how to independently analyze Fourth Amendment problems that you're running into. So again, case law is not like, yes, you can, no, you can't. Case law is, it depends. The statement, great instructor with Blue to Gold, John Ween, says it all the time. Change the facts, change the answer. Okay, and that's how case law operates. So we got to cover a couple of things though. Who did the search and seizure? Was it a protected area? Did it even occur, and do you have crew? For those of you that have been in the class before or seen Blue to Gold stuff, crew is what? Consent, recognized exception, or warrant. You cannot take action against somebody's Fourth Amendment rights without one of those 4 things, or 3 things technically. All right? But what is the Fourth Amendment? Does the Fourth Amendment say that we cannot seize people? No. What does the Fourth Amendment protect you from? Unreasonable. Okay? So that's where we get our rules. That's where the things we have to follow. Okay? So every seizure requires crew. Consent, recognized exception, or a warrant. When you are about to take action as a police officer, if you do not have one of these things, you should stop. That is where we get ourselves in trouble, okay? And there are certain areas where this is required, and if you don't have it, and I see Director, is that the right title? Yeah. Director Walsh there. He has the luxury of seeing all of the things that cops screw up on that come through post. He would be the first one to tell you how many of these things happen. How many police officers end up on his desk with their post certification on the line for doing something without crew, and they didn't even know they were doing something wrong. That's the problem. The more you articulate, the more likely you are to be justified in what you're doing. We suck at writing reports as police officers. Our reports are awful. And I hear it all the time. Just put the basics in there. Just put the minimum in there. You have got to write reports. You have got to write reports that are very long. I've got some videos in here that I'm going to show you. My reports are 4 or 5 paragraphs before I even make contact with the suspect, because I'm articulating reasonable suspicion before I even talk to them. That's what you want, all right? The more serious the crime, the more reasonable your actions are going to be, okay? So when you are dealing with a license plate light, can you point guns at people over a license plate light alone? Typically, no. Can I point my gun at a homicide suspect? Probably, okay? The courts are going to look at the seriousness of the crime. And then we can't justify searches or seizures based on possibilities. We don't operate on possibilities, right? What do we operate on? Probabilities. It is possible that anything can happen. Is it probable? And more so than that, if it's probable, can you articulate why it's probable? So, did it even occur? Who did the search? Who did the search? What does the Fourth Amendment protect citizens from? Unreasonable searches by whom? Government agents. What about private parties? No. Can security guards basically do whatever they want and not be subject to liability under the Fourth Amendment? Yes. Criminal liability, certainly civil liability, but not under the Fourth Amendment. All right, so it does not restrict private actors, no matter how unreasonable their actions are. So when a private actor does something unlawful and gathers or gains evidence unlawfully, and then gives it to you, typically that evidence can still be used against the other person because they obtained it unlawfully, but they're not a government agent, okay? However, we run into this all the time. There's a lot of DCI agents in here. You deal with what? A lot. Sources and informants. Do you direct, participate, or encourage informant activity a lot? Yes. Do we turn informants into government agents when we do that? Yes. Okay? But you could do the same thing with a private party. You could tell a security guard like, hey, or a landlord, I can't go into there, but if you just wanted to go in there and check it out and get something for me, then, right, would we be making them a government agent? Yes. All right, so one of the cases on this, and again, I've got, typically if you attend the full classes, I've got a few coming up in the state of Wyoming. You get a lot more information. I am going to be force feeding a little bit. The Jacobson case is a big one. It's a cat out of the bag search, so to speak. But what happens is drugs get shipped through the mail. The mail carriers see the damaged package, see there's cocaine inside of it. Open it up. Yep, there's cocaine. So they close it back up, call the police. The police come over there. They take the package, open it up, find the cocaine, test the drugs. Ultimately make an arrest. What do you think the defendant tries to suppress here? That an expectation of privacy in the box and his drugs. And what do you think the court said? No, once the private actors already opened it and already knew what was inside of it, you lost your expectation of privacy. So the police did not need a warrant to reopen that box. Again, when in doubt, you should be doing warrants. When you have time to get warrants, you should be getting warrants. But again, this isn't a what-if class. I want to make sure you understand the foundation. You can't build a house without having a foundation. So if you don't know what you can lawfully do, then you shouldn't be making decisions about it until you have that foundation. So do you need a warrant? No. Build the house. But should I maybe get a warrant in this case on a homicide, a sex assault? Yeah, absolutely. The biggest things with this is you have to replicate the search that was already conducted by the private party, and you have to have lawful access to it. So if somebody knows that there's drugs in a bag and they've already gone through and searched that bag, but that bag now is in somebody's house, can you go into the house and get it? No, not without what? Consent, recognized exception, or a warrant, right? And I'm going to push crew a lot. So similar situation here. We see it with hotels all the time. Cleaning crew went in and they found drug paraphernalia. So they report it back to the manager. The manager does what? Calls the police. The police show up and the manager says, there's drugs in there, I already saw it. Does the Fourth Amendment protection as far as the expectation of privacy to the drugs, is that gone? Yeah, we already know about the drugs. But does the police officer have lawful access to the hotel room that is still rented? No, not without crew, right? So in this case, the officer's like, oh, cool, you already went in there. He goes in there, he seizes the drugs. Good or bad? Bad, because there's an expectation of privacy in the hotel room. He did not have lawful access. He replicated the search, but he was missing the other component, the other prong, all right? What about protected areas? What is protected under the Fourth Amendment? People, structures, curtilage, data, and possessions. This is what we're dealing with, okay? Basically in that order, okay? It goes without saying that my body is protected from unreasonable search and seizure, okay? But what about curtilage? This one, who's been in my classes before? And we talked about curtilage? You don't want to raise your hands. I know, there's like two in the back, you won't even raise your hands. I get a lot of pushback when I teach this portion on curtilage, that you cannot be on people's property without crew, all right? Where I see it a lot is, who's done it before? Actually, don't raise your hand. We got a chief and a post director here. But who's gone to a house to arrest somebody for PC, no warrant, and where do the four cops go? Where does one go? Side yard, backyard. Where's the other cop go? Side yard, backyard. Where does the other one go? To the front door. The other one blades off on the front door, and we start banging on the door. And when they don't answer, what do? Somebody bangs on a window. Somebody bangs on the side window. Do you have consent to be on that property? Do you have a recognized exception? Typically, no. Do you have a warrant? No. So have you violated curtilage? Yes. Should we stop doing that? Probably. So we'll cover curtilage. All right, what is curtilage, all right? These are the four factors that the courts use when you're talking about curtilage as it pertains to somebody's home, somebody's residence, all right? You've got, is it adjacent, all right? Is it enclosed? Is it site screening, and what's its use? That's how you start defining curtilage. So when we look at this picture right here, and we talk about those four factors, anybody think that you have a Fourth Amendment protection in the street? No. So can the police be anywhere they want in the street? What about this section right here, these little grass easements? Typically, who owns that? The city. And then in true fashion, true government fashion, the city owns it, but they make you maintain it, right? Okay, but do you have a Fourth Amendment protection on these easements? Typically, no. What about the sidewalk? Surely no. But what about that front yard? What about that driveway? Okay, is the front yard and the driveway adjacent to the home? Yes, absolutely it is. So should we be in somebody's front yard without consent, a recognized exception, or a warrant? No. What about enclosures? What does this fence say? This isn't like a white picket fence. This fence is like extra stay off. It's got the sharp pointies on the top. It's a metal wrought iron fence that's not very welcoming. That fence says stay off my property. Site screening devices, or use, okay? So anybody have backyards here? Do you barbecue in your backyards? Do you hot tub in your backyards? Do your kids play in your backyards? So would your backyard and your front yard be for the use and enjoyment of your own property? Then it's protected, okay? And what does that fence in the backyard say? Like who knows fence prices? That fence costs like 3,000% more money to build, right? There's a reason behind that. That fence really says I don't want people looking in my backyard. All right, so when we start putting all those things together, we color code it, okay? One of the coolest things that Blue to Gold's done is they've put a color code to curtilage, all right? Because as a cop, at least speaking for myself, I'm kind of dumb, all right? So I need colors and pictures. If it's red curtilage, you need consent, exigency, or warrant. There's no exception to that. If it's yellow curtilage, that's your knock and talk. That's your Girl Scout rule. If the Girl Scouts can do it, if the missionaries come into your house can do it, all right, if the Kirby vacuum salesman can do it, then we can do it, all right, within reason. And if it's green, it's an open field. And by open field, I don't mean pastures in Wyoming. I mean not protected under the Fourth Amendment. So hotel room apartment or hotel room hallways, for example, are open fields. Okay, the street is an open field by definition because it is not protected under the Fourth Amendment. So when we look at this house, this fancy house here, what do we think is green? Probably sidewalk to the street is green, right? We can be there. What do we think is red? Side yards, behind the fence, this side yard right here. What about yellow curtilage? Driveway up to the front door. Okay, and why? Why is it that way? Because we can be here on the green curtilage. Why would that be yellow? Because if I need to go talk to them, if I need to go have a knock and talk, the Fourth Amendment believes, the Supreme Court believes that there's an implied consent that people are allowed to come knock on your front door. Even if you don't like it, they can come to your front door, unless you've taken methods to avoid that. But this house says, you want to talk to me, come to my front door and knock. That's why that's yellow. So we can be on yellow curtilage for two reasons. And what were those? Knock and talk, call for service. Can I be on yellow curtilage for the sole purpose of evidence collection? No. So yellow can become red very fast. So it makes sense that that's red. Now, all of a sudden, the side on the left there just turned yellow. How come? There's a gate there, right? So what if they're having a party in the backyard? And you're there for a call for service, loud music, loud noise. You go to the front door, you knock on the front door, nobody answers. And you hear them in the backyard. Is it reasonable to believe that if I go to the side gate and I take direct access to them, that's where I would make contact with them? Am I going to want to articulate that, though? Yes. So I've got a video. I wish I could tell the whole story, but I went to a loud music complaint. They were in the garage, and the music was playing super loud. I went to the front door first. I knew they were in the garage, but I went to the front door first, so that way I could articulate if something bad happened that I tried to make contact at the front door first. When I didn't, I walked around the side, I went to the garage, and what I found were three grown men standing probably inches from each other, air guitaring, drunk out of their mind to classic rock in this little weird air guitar circle. It was a strange, and I stopped, and I was like, really? And then I was like, body camera, I got to show this to the guys. Right, and they're so drunk, and the music is so loud, and they're so close to each other, air guitar, and one dude's doing some drums, and I had to get their attention. And once I got their attention, I said, hey, music's a little loud. They said, all right, we'll turn it down. I left. That was the end of it. But did I go into protected curtilage to make contact with them? Yes. Did I basically go into their garage? Yes. What if I would have come around that corner and they would have been loading 50 pounds of meth into a truck? Had I not taken actions before that to make sure that I was lawfully present, what happens to that evidence? It's gone. And what do you think they're going to try to do immediately in court. They're going to start trying to suppress it. But he was unlawfully on my property. That is why curtilage is so important. Why would this turn red? Not necessarily time and day, but it could be. Do I need to be doing knock and talks at 3 in the morning? Sure, sometimes. What if it's unnecessary? There's no logical explanation for it. Or I go onto the property solely for doing what? Gathering evidence. With no exigency, no exception, no consent, no warrant, then that would be red. Okay? So we talked about knock and talks. What can we do? We can go up and knock on the door. We can talk to people. It's totally reasonable. So the courts call it the Girl Scout rule, right? The Supreme Court specifically said, we don't really need to set rules for the things that the Girl Scouts have been doing for decades. If the Girl Scouts can do it, we can probably do it, okay? It's very simple. Managed just by the Girl Scouts. Florida v. Jardines is your major case on curtilage. There's lots and lots and lots of cases after that, but Florida v. Jardines is your primary case. All right, that's kind of your landmark case that starts all that. And interesting enough, Florida v. Jardines started out as a canine case. A canine handler took his dog onto the property with the intent to sniff the property, and the courts were like, that's not a good thing to do. But like most case law, it set the precedent for how we go on property later. It's just like Peyton v. New York was a warrantless entry case, but it set the tone and it set the rules for what we were required to go into somebody's house. Okay, so it's super simple, all right? But it's just interesting that it started as a dog case. But his sole purpose for going onto the property was to do what? Run a dog. Is that a knock and talk? No. Is that a call for service? No. So you can't take your canine onto somebody's property with the intent to sniff because it's protected curtilage. Do you see the color codes? They make sense now when we start looking at that. And I'll spend typically 2 hours on curtilage in the regular class, but you get like 20 minutes on it today. So when he brought his dog on, it turned red. Also, if you go online, you hit Blue to Gold's YouTube channels, there's webinars. They've got entire videos, entire webinars dedicated solely to curtilage. We screw up curtilage a lot. A lot. How many, how many curtilage violations come across your desk as the chief where you're like, we got to talk to the officer? How many come across your desk as the director of post? It happens a lot, right? And most of the time you don't even know you're doing something wrong. Who's violated, after this little portion, who's violated curtilage and didn't even know it? Right? You're just lucky nothing bad happened to you. This is why curtilage is so important. It's a hard one to watch, but it is very necessary for you to see. It's a robbery, but he robs a skateboard. He uses physical violence to take a skateboard from a kid. So by definition, it's a violent felony. Okay? The police go to his house. They find him sitting in his backyard in his patio. Another officer there knocks on his door trying to speak to the wife, despite the fact that the guy is saying, get off my property, I don't want you here, leave. Okay, he says, quit knocking, leave my house. They refused to leave, they kept knocking, he pulls a gun out and they shoot him. Okay, so the question you have to ask yourself is, did they have probable cause to arrest him? We would all agree yes. Okay? So that factor's met. Did they have consent to be on his property in his curtilage? No, clearly not. That was revoked the second he said, get off my property. Did they have a warrant to be on his curtilage, on his property? No. So now we're left with what? Recognized exception. What recognized exception can anybody in this room think? And again, do you think these cops think that they were doing anything wrong at the time they did it? No, most cops don't think they're doing something wrong at the time they do it. What recognized exception would they have to be on the property? So let's think about it. Risk of escape? I don't think we can articulate risk of escape. Evidence destruction? I don't think we can articulate that he's destroying evidence. Okay, what about emergency aid? Danger to the people inside the home? No, I don't think we can articulate that. So we don't have an exception. So we go back to crew. Did we have consent? No. Did we have recognized exception? No. Did we have a warrant? No. Does it matter he committed a violent felony? No. So are they or are they not on his property lawfully after what we just talked about? They're unlawfully on his property. What should they have done? Left the property, surrounded it, and done what? Got a warrant. Okay? Instead, they end up in a shooting and they shoot and kill this guy on his own property where they're not even lawfully present. Okay? So here's what the court said on that. Just because they had probable cause does not demonstrate that there's an exigency or an emergency circumstance. Officers should have left. They should have left the property. Now it's hard for us as cops, right? Because we got a guy who's committed a violent felony and we want to go capture guys. I don't think this was an ego or a pride thing either. I don't think the cops thought, no, you can't tell us. No, I think they just hadn't attended a Blue to Gold class yet. That's what I think. Okay? So you look at this, and they are very, very, very clear. We can go onto the property in the yellow areas to contact people. That constitutionality is fine. But it's whether or not our actions are consistent with an attempt to initiate contact with the occupants of the home. When they revoke your right, I've got more on that video. It was a huge lawsuit. Cops lost their jobs. City paid out a lot of money. They were not lawfully present on the property, which means they were not acting with lawful authority. We look at this one right here. So we can see the line of this property, right? We can kind of see the outline. Knowing what we just talked about, 4 cops want to go to the house and they want to talk to the owner. They want to talk to the people inside the house. No problem with that. But what I'm going to show you, what this little cool animation is going to do is exactly what just about everybody in this room has done half a dozen times or more in your career. And I love it because I'll look around when I start doing this and I see people doing this. Or they'll look to the next person and they're like, we just did that. We just did that last week. Right? It happens, right? But that's why this class is important. Nothing bad happened to you yet, but it will. It will catch up with you. And if you don't think for a second that law firms are looking at this exact thing, how many?
Too many.
How many lawsuits or intend to sue are coming down based on this exact scenario? These law firms are getting so serious about it that they find cops or they find people who have been arrested for things like this. They read that and then they reach out to them and say, have you been arrested recently for fighting with the cops on your own property? You know what I mean? They're doing this. They're looking out and seeking it. You have the whole state. How many of these are coming across your desk? Threshold and curtilage. Plenty. I'm not kidding when I tell you that this is probably the sleeping giant of law enforcement for us. This will end your career, and this will cost your department money if you don't stop. So we got green curtilage, easy, right? Red curtilage, we can all agree. We got yellow curtilage, but what do? Who's done this? Everybody's done it. Everybody's been in this exact scenario. So they go to the backyard and they find a big marijuana grow. Boom, ding, 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 jackpot, we got it. They're going to jail. What happens to the marijuana grow? Suppressed. Why? They are not lawfully present on curtilage. They do not have consent, they do not have an exception, and they do not have a warrant. It's gone. What happens? Well, in the back, they walk around the corner and they shoot somebody. They get into a shooting, just like the Sparks case. I don't want to be in that position, and I know you don't either. And you certainly don't want to be in the position where you shoot somebody thinking you were justified, and then a week later, you find out you weren't justified. Because that's going to make a bad situation already worse. All right, what about shining a flashlight into a garage? We're on curtilage, okay? And I'm walking up past the garage door, and I'm walking to the front door, and there's a garage that's got a window, 5 feet tall. It's the middle of the night. As I walk by, I shine my flashlight through the window and peek inside the garage. And inside, I see a dead body or drugs or whatever. Who thinks good? Who thinks bad? If you've been in my class, you can't answer because you know the answer. All right? Yes, it's going to be fine. Using the flashlight to look through the window is going to be just fine. That might not be a garage. That could be the front door. If I'm standing at the front door of a house and there's a big bay window right there and it's dark inside and I'm standing there with a flashlight and I shine my flashlight in, we're fine. Why? Why would it be okay there? Because the courts compare your flashlight to the same as if the sun was up. The courts don't make a distinction that say, well, it's dark so you couldn't see it without the sun, therefore it's not good. It's the sunlight rule. So don't be afraid to use your flashlights. The biggest thing is you need to be lawfully present where you are at in order to utilize the flashlight. Can you walk all the way along the side of the house, all the way to the edge, and shine your flashlight in the bedroom window? No, of course not. So flashlights are going to be fine. Okay, same garage door as you're walking by, but it's only open 2 inches at the bottom. So you're like, well, it's open. He's exposed it to the public. So you get down on your hands and knees, you put your head to the ground, and you peek underneath the garage door and you see evidence. Who thinks good? Who thinks bad? Nobody wants to answer. This is a non-answering class. I get it. All right? It's bad. It's an artificial vantage point. Okay? Think about what you would want. Is it reasonable? I'm at my house and somebody's walking by, and as they walk by, they can see in my garage and they see my projects or my messy garage. I expect that that's going to happen. But what if you poke out your window and you see somebody on their hands and knees peering underneath the 2-inch open garage door? Would that make you, what would you do? How many people think that would generate a call for service to the police? There's a creepy dude. If it's Justin, it's definitely a creepy dude. There's a creepy dude on his hands and knees peering underneath my window or underneath my garage door. That arises suspicion. So do you think the courts are going to be okay with that? No. So no, we cannot get on our hands and knees and touch our head to the ground to peer underneath the 2 inches of an open garage door. If the garage door is open 3 feet, that's a different story. But what is the lesson here? Common sense. If you are doing something that seems way outside of the norm, you probably shouldn't do it. That's what it comes down to. You shouldn't do it if it seems super weird to you. Or maybe another scenario would be, if I was at my house and I saw somebody doing this, I would be weirded out and I would probably call the police or I would go confront them. That might also be a clue that maybe what you're doing is a little strange. The courts don't require you to walk and talk like a penguin, okay? You don't have to take the most direct route. You don't have to stand at attention at the front door and not sidestep to the left or the right, okay? That's not what the courts are saying. That's not what I'm telling you. And I'm not trying to scare you into thinking that you can't occupy the porch with multiple officers when you're trying to make contact with a dangerous subject, okay? It's not what I'm telling you. What I'm telling you is that you need to be reasonable in your actions, reasonable in your behaviors. You need to be reasonable in the way that when Director Walsh sends you a letter that says, you are under investigation, I need an explanation for what happened, that you can feel confident in the information you send to him. Because a letter back that says, I thought I was good, turns out I wasn't, have mercy on me, XOXO Bigelow, is probably not going to be the response that he wants, right? So we can be nosy. We just can't be intrusive, right? And I look around here and I see lots of bosses in the room. I see team leaders, I see commanders, I see chiefs, I see the director of post. How many chiefs in the room besides the one that I know, right? Another chief. How many captains, deputy chiefs, lieutenants, commanders, team leaders? Right, the room's filled with a lot of bosses. You guys are the ones that are going to be looking at this stuff from front. You're the ones that are going to be seeing these things up front. How many supervisors in the room at the supervisor level? You are the ones who are going to see your officers doing this well before it makes it to his desk. You owe it to your officers to understand this so you can stop them when they try to do it. So we talked about knock and talk. Calls for service. Calls for service are very simple. We have a call for service, so we go to the house. All right? That allows for a limited intrusion to investigate. However, Does a call for service without exigency allow you to go into red curtilage? No, we cannot violate red curtilage. I can't. The reason why I'm really harping on this is because I think it's probably one of the things that are getting cops in trouble the most right now. It is a really hot ticket, hot budget item. Rick, you said something to me yesterday. Somebody had mentioned that the curtilage and threshold issues were the what?
The sleeping giant of the Fourth Amendment.
The sleeping giant of the Fourth Amendment. We have been violating curtilage and we have been violating thresholds for years. And we've been getting away with it for the most part. I asked the post director here, former police chief, former captain, former lieutenant, former sergeant, 1935, 1940, something like that. Just kidding. I bet you when he was working the streets as a police officer, the law hasn't changed. It's always been this way. But I bet you guys were running and gunning like the Wild West. But what didn't exist then? Cameras, cell phone, Ring doorbell cameras, body cameras, dash cameras. Okay, so cops were able to justify their actions, rather truthfully or with some colorful writing, far easier than they can now, right? And I'm not condoning that you justify anything through any sort of integrity violation, but you understand what I'm saying. Things are different now. This is the sleeping giant. These are the things, and it's one of the reasons why I'm really standing on the soapbox here for thresholds. It is getting cops in trouble, sued, cops are losing their careers, and departments are paying dearly for these violations. Home threshold, and this is why we're going to touch on that one too. The home's threshold. In this beautiful mansion here, when we talk about curtilage, what's green? The whole sidewalk, right? That's public. Where do you think the red curtilage is? The actual door itself, the threshold, the crossing of the threshold, and maybe this little junk pile side yard, right? So I would argue there's not really any yellow curtilage here because it's all either open field or we can't go in. All right, does the severity of the crime matter? Who's familiar with Peyton? So what I find a lot when I teach these classes is everybody in this room is familiar with Peyton, they just didn't know it because they don't know the name associated with it. Who in this room knows that with an arrest warrant, probable cause to believe it's their residence, and a reasonable belief that they're home, you can make entry into the home to arrest the person based on the arrest warrant? Who knows that? Everybody in the room understands and knows that. Who in the room knew that that was Peyton? Right? Not very many people. So that's why we cover this. All right? Let's say I believe that you have committed 50 armed robberies and 3 sex assaults in the last 6 months, and I track you down to your house. You do not have a warrant for your arrest, and I don't have consent to go into your house and get you. I knock on the door, and your girlfriend answers the door. And you're standing in the house behind your girlfriend, across the threshold, and you say, you are under arrest, I've got a plethora of violent felony charges for you, I don't have a warrant yet, you need to come out of the house. And that person says, nope, I'm not coming out. But he's committed an egregious amount of violent felonies. Do you have consent to go in and get him right now? No. Do you have an arrest warrant to go in and get him right now? Do we have an exigency, a recognized exception? Who thinks, well, he's standing right there, he's a violent felon, I should be able to go get him? Who thinks that or has thought that in the past? Many people, okay? But in reality, what do you think the real answer is? Unless you can articulate an exigency to cross the threshold of that door without consent or a warrant, you cannot go in. It does not matter what crime they have committed, period. And I'm not going, I've got a couple of cases that are coming up. There are 2 in Wyoming in the last year and a half that really come to mind when we talk about threshold arrests. I am willing to bet, and I've had conversations with people involved in those incidents, they did not know what they were doing at the time was wrong. It doesn't absolve them, but it wasn't until after the fact they realized I may have screwed up. Okay? This is a big issue. So, that person says, I'm not coming to the front door, I'm not coming out, you guys leave. What do you have to do? You got to leave. Do you have to leave the whole area? No, but you do have to do what? Get off the property, surround it, write a warrant. Okay? If they have an arrest warrant, though, it's different. All right? What if they have a warrant for their arrest already? Is it their residence? Do you have a belief that they're home? And do you have a warrant for their arrest? If those 3 conditions are met, then what can you do? you can enter the residence, enter the curtilage, and you can arrest the person for whom you have the arrest warrant for, okay? And you can enter and look for them in people-sized places, correct? Okay? So with the arrest warrant. Now, what if it's a seatbelt warrant? What if it's a 2-year-old, this is a great one, I love this. What if it's a 2-year-old seatbelt warrant and it's 3 o'clock in the morning and you're like, yeah, we're bored, let's go get the dude. Could you boot a door in at 3 o'clock in the morning on a 2-year-old seatbelt warrant? No, not in Wyoming. Wyoming actually has a specific case related to that. The cops used an old, obscure warrant to enter a home as an excuse to look for other things. And Wyoming was like, yeah, that's not good. Wyoming is a little more restrictive. Wyoming said, we don't really want cops booting in doors on seatbelt warrants that are like 2 years old. Now, if it had been 4 o'clock in the afternoon and he had a seatbelt warrant and they needed to serve it and they tried to knock on the door and he didn't come to the door and you know what I mean, would they have probably been okay? Sure, why not? So I will tell you as a new sergeant, if guys come to me and say, if Gonzo is like, hey, Sarge, I want to kick that door in at 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm going to be like, cool, tell me about it. What's your thought process? Why are we booting a door in at 3 o'clock in the morning? Right, and if he's like, nah, I'm bored. Seems like something to do right now. Get a little action. The answer is going to be absolutely not, right? But if he says, hey, dude's got a felony warrant right now. We know he's home right now. We've been looking for him for a few days. Yeah, absolutely. Do you see the difference? Okay, so we cannot make entry. Here's another one for you.
Get out here right now. Get out here. Get on the ground.
No. They hit that wall so hard, I thought they were going to come through the wall. Stop!
Okay, so for the purpose of this video, he's in an apartment building. Old man has committed a violent felony. Yes, there was no doubt, there's no dispute that he had committed a violent felony. He was arrestable for that violent felony. Okay, the cops go to his door, knock on the door, he answers it in his underwear. Let's break it down. Do they have consent to go in and get him? No. Do they have a warrant for his arrest? No. Is he inside or outside of the threshold of his home? He is inside the threshold of his home. They did not articulate, nor did they have an exigency that he would escape, that he would harm somebody, or that he would destroy evidence. What should they have done? First of all, they should have de-escalated. I bet you that old man, if they would have just, what's he trying to do? Is he trying to dispute, or is he trying to get them to listen? He wants his side of the story to be heard. But instead of listening to his side of the story, you got 2 cops, one pointing a gun and the other one pointing a taser, and they're screaming at him. Right? That guy's not going to listen to what you have to say. De-escalate that situation. The guy's in his underwear. All right? Probably doesn't have a gun. It's probably not a danger to you. I bet you if they would have taken a few minutes to say, hey man, we just want to hear your side of the story, what happened? I bet you that guy invites them in. Once they're inside, are they lawfully present? Yes, but they tase him across the threshold of the doorway without consent, without an exception, without a warrant. What do you think the outcome of this was? Chief, am I on administrative leave when you see this video?
Pretty quickly.
Do I have a job after the investigation's over? You do this, your livelihood is on the line. That is how important this is. $7 million settlement for tasing a 75-year-old man. $7 million they paid out for this. $7 million. No, but he was extremely disabled afterwards. $7 million. This cop, he's no longer a cop, and he's now a criminal. All right? And the other cop, career's over. The female that was with him that didn't even deploy the taser, her career's over too. All right? So here's the Wyoming Supreme Court case. Anybody from Cheyenne in here right now? Okay. You guys in Cheyenne are well aware of the settlement that just went public on the news. You guys are probably aware of this interference case. Here is the nuts and bolts of this case. I am not trying to admonish anybody. This is not coming down on people. Again, what I find is that police officers did not even know they did something wrong until afterwards. They're not acting with malfeasance. They're acting with ignorance because they were not trained correctly, or I mean, it's a failure to train in many cases. They have probable cause to arrest a gentleman for domestic battery. They go to the house where he is at. They do not have consent or a warrant. Pregnant girlfriend answers the door. Gentleman is standing behind pregnant girlfriend, and they say, you're under arrest, you need to come out. And he says, nope, I'm not coming out. The facts are a little disputed, but at some point, girlfriend gets pushed out of the way by the police. They reach across the threshold, grab him. They fight with him. Ultimately, they arrest him. And they arrest him for interference in the domestic battery. The domestic battery charges get dismissed, so you don't even have the original charge anymore. He gets convicted of interference, and he appeals that to the Wyoming Supreme Court. And the Wyoming Supreme Court, what's an element of interference? You must be engaged in the lawful performance of your duties, right? If you are committing a Fourth Amendment violation when somebody interferes with you, are you lawfully engaged in your duties? No, you are unlawfully engaged in your duties. You are committing a Fourth Amendment violation. So the Wyoming Supreme Court said, you were not in the performance of your duties lawfully, therefore the element of interference, one of the elements was missing, therefore dismissed, gone, thrown out. And then he immediately did what? Lawsuit. And he paid out, $175,000 was the payout on that. Okay? So again, I'm not trying to come down on anybody. I'm not trying to attack the Cheyenne Police Department in this particular incident. But I bet you, after the fact, somebody inside the department said, we probably need to do some additional training on this particular topic, right? So that's what tends to happen with us, is we do this stuff after the fact. All right, hot pursuit, misdemeanor hot pursuit requires an exigency. Anybody remember the days when they ran from you and ran into a house, you chased them, period? Okay? That was disputed for a long time. Felony, misdemeanor, was it okay, was it not okay? And Lange v. California, the Supreme Court in 2021 settled it and said, if you are in hot pursuit of a subject and they have committed a felony, you're good to go, you can enter the home. This is not a tactics class, so I'm not going to talk to you about tactically, do I think it is a good idea to chase an individual into a home by yourself? I think that's how you get killed, so maybe don't do that. But legally, could you? Yes. All right, a misdemeanor requires an exigency. What are the exigencies? Destruction of evidence. So you go to arrest them for possession of controlled substances, they break away and they run into their home. Good all day. You try to arrest a domestic violence suspect outside the home, the wife is inside, and they run into the home. Is she in danger? Yes. All we need to do is articulate these things, okay? We need to articulate, but again, what is it that we do very poorly a lot as cops? Supervisors in the room who reads reports. We don't write good reports. We don't write good reports. I have found many times that, specifically Gonzo here, he does something really cool, he's really proud of himself, I get the report and it's trash. I'm just kidding, that's not true, I'm not gonna call him out, that's not real. But what I found, especially as a new supervisor, is just because the report is trash doesn't mean you didn't have it. So instead of saying, no, you didn't have it, and panicking, sit down with me and we're gonna talk about it. Forget the report, tell me every single thing you did and why. I saw this vehicle, they blocked their face, they turned onto a side street, they distanced, they accelerated, they self-stopped, they self-exited the vehicle, they appeared to be busy as soon as they made contact, intimidation tactics, furtive movements, blading. Now, what do I have? I've got reasonable suspicion, but he didn't put it in the report. I'm gonna use Gonzo for this, but it's not in the report. So now once we've had that conversation, I go back and I say, put all of that on paper and give it back to me. And now all of a sudden, what do I have? I got a juicy report that justifies everything he did. We need to be better at doing that. The more you write, the better off you are. So the same thing's gonna exist with exigency when you're entering a home on a misdemeanor. All right, so compelling needs, protecting occupants from harm, preventing the escape. Right, they run through the front door and you see them beeline to the back door and they bust through the back door on their way to the alley. Could you move through the house to prevent the escape? Yeah, if you can articulate it. Again, tactically, this isn't a tactics class. But legally, sure, safety risks to the others, or to the occupants, safety risks to the public. All right, you have to be the plain view side of this, so we're getting into plain view seizures here, okay? So you have to be within plain view to show the exigency. So even if it's visible, right, it's the same concept of entering a home. Even if it's visible, it doesn't mean that you can seize it, because it requires two components. And I think I got that slide out of, there's some slides that I'm missing. Again, I had to compress a lot of stuff, so I apologize for the area there. It threw me off there too. But what it's talking about is, you have to have lawful presence. Okay, so if you're not lawfully present on curtilage and there's evidence on curtilage, can you go onto that curtilage to collect that evidence? Without crew? No. So an example of that is, there's a specific case that I pulled out, but I just want you to know about it. There's a gun in the front yard of a home. And the officers can see the gun from the sidewalk. And an officer goes onto this, he's like, oh, cool, the gun. And he goes and he retrieves the gun from the front yard. Two components to plain view seizures. You must recognize immediately that it is what? Contraband, evidence. But you also must have lawful access. All right? Did that officer have lawful access to the curtilage? No. So was that seizure unlawful? Yes, it was a Fourth Amendment violation. Gone. Because you couldn't seize it. All right? You can't go onto people's front yards. So that's what it's talking about. So areas that are not curtilage are open fields. That's like streets, sidewalks, hotel room, apartment, or hotel hallways. I would be very cautious about trying to apply an apartment building hallway to the open field deal. There's cases that go one way or the other, but are apartments short-term living with reduced expectation of privacy, or do people live there for long periods of time? I'd be very cautious about trying to apply the open field to an apartment hallway. I'd be very cautious with that. So I tell our canine handlers at the police department, you guys can run your dogs through hotel hallways all you want. Perfectly acceptable. As long as the hotel has given you permission, you can do that all day, and you don't need anything. But if you get an apartment complex owner who says, I want you to run your dog through the apartment complex hallways, that's what I've told them is you need to take a step back and say, well, wait a second. Because there could be an argument that you're in curtilage at that point, because some courts are applying curtilage standards to apartment hallways, some are not. So just treat, like what I'm telling you is treat apartment hallways a little bit more careful, okay? Community caretaking is a huge one. Who believes that the community caretaking standard applies to homes? Anybody? Who used to think community caretaking applied to homes? Okay, we get community caretaking confused with what? Emergency aid. Okay, a lot. Community caretaking has no exigency associated with it. Emergency aid does. So for example, one of the main cases that came out of that, the reason why it doesn't apply to homes is there is no exigency with community caretaking. We don't have an exigency with community caretaking. So Coniglia v. Strom, this was a suicidal subject who, in front of his family, put a gun on the table and said, I want the cops to kill me, go ahead and kill me, made it very clear. So police show up, they make contact with him. For us it's 381, but it's Title 25. I don't know where we started being different. As I travel around the state and teach, I say 3-1, and people are like, what? That's like a Natrona County thing only. Title 25, mental health hold. Okay? So they put him on a hold, but then what do you think they do afterwards? He's a danger to himself with guns, even though he's now in a facility. So they go back to his house, they enter his home without consent, without a warrant. They believe they're operating under a recognized exception, and they go in and seize his firearms and log them for safekeeping at the police department. And he sues and says, they entered my home unlawfully. Do you think he won? Yes, he absolutely won. Because you cannot enter homes under community caretaking. It is not an exigency. All right? Community caretaking applies to inventories, for example. Okay, it applies to, I arrest somebody for a DUI and they have a pistol in the car. By our policy, I cannot leave that pistol. I have to take it and log it at the police department, right? That is a community caretaking function. Homes do not have community caretaking. So don't ever let me hear you say, I entered the home on the community caretaking exception, because there isn't one, all right? Emergency aid counts. So the emergency aid exception is what we're talking about here. There must be an objective reason that an emergency exists, and that conduct, whatever your conduct is, must have the nexus to that emergency. This is the exception that we're talking about. So when we start talking about emergency aid, is there an objective reason that an emergency exists when the dude's already been taken off to the hospital on a mental health hold and that he's still got guns in the house? Absolutely not. Therefore, the conduct has no nexus to the emergency.
Code 3 to a domestic in progress. The caller here is saying there's multiple people out there. Everything is unknown other than that. It's unlocked.
Sheriff's office.
Sheriff's office. Yep, 2-9.
So they enter the home and clear it. So let's break it down again. Do they have consent to go into that house? No. Do they have a warrant? No. So what are we left with? The part of crew, right? Is that crew? The part? All right. How are they getting in? What exception do you think allows them to go into that house? Emergency aid. They responded to a domestic. They had reports that there was a domestic in progress. When they get there, the door is open and there's a bunch of stuff out in front of the house. There's clearly been what? An altercation. Anybody in this room think that it is not reasonable to believe that there could be somebody inside that's injured, that needs aid? Absolutely there is. So they make entry into there. Now, when they make entry in there, though, what is the nexus for, what are they doing that is the nexus for which they've entered? Are they looking for evidence? Are they looking for knives, guns, weapons? No, they're looking for what? Injured people who need assistance. Once they clear the home and they don't find anybody, what has to stop? The search. Do they have to exit? No, they're lawfully present. They can hold it, but any additional crime scene processing at that point would require what? A warrant or consent, okay? You hear her say there's 2 knives in the bathtub. What if those knives are bloody? There's blood everywhere. Is that evidence coming in? Yes. Based on emergency aid. They were lawfully present. They responded to a 911 hang up. All right? He refused entry. He had bloody knuckles. There were multiple cars in the driveway. He admitted he was married, and he's being hostile and uncooperative. Who thinks the domestic has occurred and that somebody could be injured inside the home? I think so. I'm articulating this. Guess what's happening? We're making entry and we're going to verify that there is not an injured other party inside that house. But that's great articulation, right? So lawful under the emergency aid exception. Lawful. And they articulated it. That's the type of report I want to see. Bloody knuckles, multiple cars in the driveway, lights are on inside the house, he's blocking the doorway, he's being evasive, he admits that he's married. I want all the factors. So that way when I'm standing tall explaining why I did something, or we force entry and we get into a use of force, I can justify it. Same scenario, only you get called to a 911, they hear things banging around, but for whatever reason your call volume's so high, officers don't get there. And it's been 45 minutes, and 45 minutes later you get there, you go to the door, you answer the door, and the male and the female both answer the door. Neither one of them appear to be injured, neither one of them appear to be hurt, there's no evidence of a disturbance, and both of them say, yeah, we're fine. And you force entry anyways under emergency aid. Good or bad? Bad. Do you see how we change the facts, change the answer? Do you see how case law, people say, well, case law says you can or can't do something. That's not actually what case law does. Case law gives you a set of circumstances and facts that apply generally to a specific case, and then you have to apply all of the facts and circumstances to that case, right? There's a reason why sometimes you'll get similar cases that go up and you'll have different outcomes. Change the facts, change the answer. Daughter calls. Who has this one? My 80-year-old mother, I haven't talked to her in 4 days. Haven't talked to her in 4 days. Can you please go over to the house? And you go over there and her car's in the driveway. All right, there's mail stacking up. You knock on the door at 1 p.m., nobody answers. What other factors do you think? Like, just throw some out there. Flies, odor, right? What do you think's going on here? Grandma's getting eaten by the cats. We've seen it. Sorry for being curt, but we've seen it, right? The hungry pets inside the house are eating the loving owner at this point. Okay, could we enter? Yeah, sure we could, as long as we articulate why. All right, what if we enter and we find evidence of a homicide? Is that evidence coming in? Sure it is, because you had an emergency aid reason to enter. All right, the firefighter rule. What do you think that means? Nobody? No firefighter jokes? That's fine. Okay, when firefighters and paramedics are taking action and they're looking through pockets and they're looking around homes, typically what are they doing it for? To medications, reasons for the behavior, right? They're doing it to help. Emergency aid, right? That's kind of what they're doing. The same rule applies to us. If the firefighters can do it under those reasons, then typically we can, okay? So here's an example here. I responded to a bar for what people believed was an overdose. And en route, the call information coming in is that he's unresponsive, barely breathing on the floor, that somebody has administered Narcan to him. So I get on scene, I'm one of the first ones to get on scene. We roll in, and they've already given him Narcan. Paramedics haven't gotten on scene yet. So you're missing a whole portion of this, but what I want you to do, he's unresponsive for the purpose of this. I want you to watch what I do, and then we'll talk about it.
Not a lot of breaths, probably some gas.
How much do you take? What am I doing right now? Am I searching him? Yes. Does he have a Fourth Amendment protection in his pockets? Yes. Am I exercising action against his Fourth Amendment rights to go into his pockets? Yes. What did I just find in the process? Foil, straw, lighter, evidence. Could he be charged with that? Yes. Did I have consent? No. Did I have a warrant? No. So why am I in his pockets then? Emergency aid. But on my report, when I document this, what do you think my report says? In summation, it says that I recognize this to be a likely drug overdose, specifically fentanyl. That in my training experience, people who overdose on drugs are often in possession of those drugs, or paraphernalia associated with those drugs, or the use of those drugs. That in order to assist firefighters and EMS personnel with ascertaining the reason for his overdose, I searched his pockets for evidence related, or for items related to the overdose to better allow paramedics to help him. So do you see the difference? Am I in his pockets for evidence? No, and I'm truly not. Like, I really want to be able to go in his pockets and say, all right, I have the fentanyl. Guys, this is actually a fentanyl overdose, so they can treat it accordingly. Could I still charge him with that paraphernalia? Yeah, absolutely I could. Now, did I charge him with that? No, what I did is, Brad will understand this, and everybody sitting over the table, I went to the hospital after he was awake, and I said, I would really like information pertaining to the fentanyl you overdosed on, and I would be more than happy to trade the paraphernalia that's in your possession for information. Right? And that's what I did instead, and then I pushed the information up, because he overdosed on one pill. I don't want charges on him for one pill. What do I actually want? I want 10,000 pills. I want to push information to DCI. So he gives information, I push that up to DCI, I log the evidence for destruction, he has a hospital bill, it's kind of a win-win to me, right? And we get intel on his dealer, they're working the case. That's how, to me, that's like the long-term goal, that's the big picture. But if we needed that, could we charge him with that? Would it come in? Absolutely, because that's community caretaking, okay? The funniest videos I've ever seen was a takedown that DCI did with Casper PD. And as he's running, he's got a shoulder bag, and he's running. He gets out of the car and he runs, and you see him run around this hedge. And then as the hedge, the body or the dash camera picks up this bag that just boop, flies up over and lands on the other side. And what was in it? Like a pound of meth, something like that. Did he abandon ownership in that bag when he threw it? Yes. Right? That's intentional abandonment. And then also repeated disclaimers of ownership. These aren't my pants. I'm not saying that you can't go in and search somebody's pants when they do that, but. All right, so we have purposeful abandonment. Purposeful abandonment is the person throws a bag, gets rid of a bag, they see you, they drop a bag, and they say, it's not my bag, I don't know anything about it. Don't know anything about the bag. All right, that's purposeful abandonment. You can do whatever you want with it. You can search it, you can look in it, you own it. What I hear all the time in the argument I get is, well, if you saw them throw it or you saw them put it down, then it's their bag, they still have a Fourth Amendment protection in that bag. And the answer is they do not. They abandon it with their actions and their words. Even though you know it's their bag and you know you're going to charge them with whatever's in it, when they drop it, throw it, destroy it, get rid of it, and then say, it's not my bag, I don't know anything about it, it is abandoned under the Fourth Amendment. So there is no requirement that you get a warrant on that bag, for example. Inadvertent abandonment is you drop your wallet, you leave your backpack at the bus station. Okay, that search is always going to be good too, but you're doing what the public can do. If I left my backpack at a bus stop, could anybody go through the bag? Yeah, right? That's the same thing. And then lost property, inventory for search of owner, okay? That's what abandonment is, right? So what we're talking about here is, what I care about, at least from like the street cop perspective, is intentional abandonment, right? The people who are disavowing ownership of stuff. But courts give you a huge latitude with inadvertent abandonment, right? The lost bag, the forgotten bag. Inadvertent abandonment is different. I'm at the bus stop, I see the bag, I'm starting to go through the bag, and then somebody comes up and is like, hey, that's my bag, man, I forgot it here. Would you then need to stop searching the bag? Yes, because they're reclaiming ownership and they can. Do you see the difference? So it's exactly that. They walk in, The dude sees the guy, or the dude sees the cops when they walk in. He takes his cigarette pack, throws it on the floor, and walks away from it. So the cop is like, red flag, that's suspicious. And he picks up the cigarette pack, opens it, and there's drugs inside of it. Good or bad? Good, he abandoned it, right? Very, very, very simple. He left his wallet. Super smart criminals. Okay, so he leaves the wallet there, cops show up. Did he abandon the wallet? Yes, inadvertently or intentionally? Inadvertently. So what can we do with that wallet? Same thing the public can do. What can the public do? Open it up. Look inside of it. So we can absolutely search that wallet. That wallet is fair game. Different scenario. I give somebody a courtesy ride. I don't know about you guys, I'll give courtesy rides. But I have a couple of rules when I give a courtesy ride. You must identify yourself. I check you to make sure you're not wanted. And you must allow me to pat you down for weapons. Or search you. I ask for a full search. Or you don't get a courtesy ride. Okay, so conceivably when I've put somebody into my car and allowed them to be in my vehicle, I've searched them, I've identified them. So let's say I drop them off at their house or wherever I was taking them, and I start to drive away and I look in the back and I see, oh shit, he left his wallet in the back. So I get out and I grab that wallet and I go through the wallet and I open it and I start searching through it. Good or bad? Bad, but why? I already know who it belongs to. There is a Fourth Amendment expectation of privacy in that wallet, and I know who it belongs to. I know it's his wallet, I know where he lives, I know who he is. I can't search the wallet. Now, what if I tried to go back to the house and I couldn't get a hold of him and I had to log the wallet in for safekeeping? Then it'd be good under the inventory, right? That would be a community caretaking function. That would be the community caretaking search. So do you see how we got to articulate the things that we're doing? So, oh, Andrews v. State. This is my favorite case. And do you remember Burkle hotel room bag? Had like a quarter-pound in it. Okay, so this one came up. This was, anybody who knows me knows that sometimes I step on a soapbox and fight battles, and I'll argue. Particularly when I feel very, very strongly about a particular topic. And this was one of those. But this comes down to like people knowing about abandonment but not quite understanding. It's not an intentional thing. It is not people doing the wrong thing. It is just, we get who's been a cop for 15 years in here or more? Right? Is it safe to say that you are kind of stuck in your ways a little bit? And that it would be hard to get somebody to change your mind on certain things without some real pressure? Sure, right? So Andrews v. State is pretty simple. They went to his house. What it was is they went to his house. He had an arrest warrant. He lives with his dad. They go to his house. This is a Wyoming case. They go to his house. He answers the door. They're like, hey, bro, you got a warrant. And he's like, all right, no problem. Can I at least get some shoes on? Super cool. He's also a burglary suspect. So they go inside, and inside the house, they see multiple duffel bags. All right? And they say, hey, man, can we search those bags? Because they know he's a burglary suspect. And Andrews says, yeah, you can search those 2 bags. But that third duffel bag, don't know anything about it. Never seen it in my life. Don't know anything about that bag. Couldn't tell you anything about it. They asked Dad, hey, is that bag yours? It's not my bag. I've never seen it before in my life either. Okay? So ultimately what happens is they say, well, if that bag is not yours and it's not your dad's and nobody knows anything about it, even though it's in your house, it is what? It's abandoned, even though it's in the house. Does anybody have an expectation of privacy in that abandoned bag? No. So what can the cops do? Whatever they want. Okay? So ultimately they search that duffel bag and they find burglary stuff inside of it. And they convict him, and he takes it to the Wyoming Supreme Court, and Wyoming Supreme Court says exactly this. The search of the bag was justified. He had no Fourth Amendment expectation of privacy. Okay, The one that I'm talking about is I get a call from an officer. They go to a hotel room. The hotel room wants these people evicted because there's drug activity. So the hotel asks the police to evict these obvious drug users. So the officers go to the door, knock on it, they answer the door, and they say, hey guys, you got to get out. Hotel wants you gone. They get consent to enter the hotel room. Once they're inside the hotel room, they get consent to search the bags in the hotel room. Okay, but the individual says, yeah, you can search stuff, man, that's fine. But that little black backpack over there in the corner of the room, that was here when we got here. We don't know anything about that backpack. Never seen it before in my life. And the officer says, what do you mean you've never seen it before in your life? He's like, it was here when I got here. I don't know anything about it. Is that backpack abandoned? Nobody in the room claims it. He doesn't apply ownership to anybody else. The backpack's abandoned. So the officer searches the backpack, finds a $quarter pound in it, and the dude's ID. So where the confusion happens is he makes phone calls, and there were some people in that chain that were like, well, I think it was a bad search. It was a bad search on the backpack. And he said, no, it was abandoned. And they're like, well, but it was in the hotel room. There's an expert. Do you see how we start applying rules to things that based on like our own experiences? And it's in good faith, but it's still, so I get that phone call. And of course I'm like, no, that's bullshit. It's an abandoned backpack. That's not accurate. And what didn't help is that an ADA got consulted and an ADA was like, yeah, I could see, you know what I mean? It just created, so I called the DA directly and was like, Andrews v. State, I don't know what's going on. I'm not even involved in this. I probably should stay in my lane, but like, we're talking about letting a $quarter pound walk. And I don't know all the details. I just know that ultimately it was like, no, it was okay, and they ended up taking it. And they prosecuted it. But what happened after the fact is people were like, I didn't even realize that that was abandoned. It's just an educational component. Andrews v. State is nearly identical situation. I don't know anything about that bag. It's in a hotel room. You cannot say that you don't know anything about an item in a room, in a hotel room you're claiming, and then turn around and try to say that you have some Fourth Amendment protection in it. So it's huge. What do people do, the term you learned yesterday all day long, with items that will get them in trouble? Distance. They distance from those items. You will get them in trouble, they distance from you, right? If the backpack gets them in trouble, they distance from you, and then they distance from the backpack. It's no different in a hotel room. Oh yeah, hey, come on in, guys. Hey, real quick though, just so you know, man, I wasn't gonna really report it, but like that bag over there, excited utterances, that was here when we got here, man. Surrender hands, that bag, anchor pointing, like I came from over here, anchor point, surrender hands, distance, that bag's not mine, right? That's what they do. When you see that behavior, you should do something with it. I love this question. Do you have anything to do with that bag, or do you know who does? Who's made traffic stops before, and you ask for consent? Hey, can I search your car from bumper to bumper, everything inside? And they go, oh, sure, man, but like that bag, or I ask this on every traffic stop I make. Is everything inside the car yours? I always ask ownership. Where are you coming from? Where are you going? Your relationship to the occupants of the vehicle, your relationship to the vehicle itself, and is everything inside the vehicle yours? And if it's not yours, who does it belong to? Every stop. Because a lot of times they go, oh, yeah, everything in the car's mine, but oh, shit, that JanSport backpack with the coloring pencils and the 47 phone chargers, that's not my backpack. Why is it in your car? Oh, I don't know, man. Somebody must have left it in there. Who left it in there? It could be anybody, man. I give lots of rides. Do you have anything to do with that backpack at all? Do you know anything about it? No, man, I don't know anything about that backpack. It's not mine. Cool. Is that backpack abandoned? Yes. Do I have lawful access to it yet? Not yet. We got to get in the car still. But that's a whole other conversation. But I've already set up the backpack abandonment. So once I have lawful access to the car, I own the backpack. All right, so did a search and seizure occur? That's the other side of this. What has to happen for a search to occur? You've got two searches. You've got a privacy search and a trespass search. We used to just have privacy searches, and then Antoine Jones, anybody who knows Antoine Jones' case? The GPS case, right? Changed it. The Antoine Jones case created a trespass, and it changed everything for us as it pertains to searches, okay? So we had privacy initially, which was CATS in '67. So CATS was a wiretapping case where the FBI put a wire inside the phone booth to listen to his phone calls, back when phone booths existed. Waldock knows all about phone booths. Some of us have used a phone booth. I can't remember the last time I've even seen one. So they wiretapped it. Now, anybody in here think that you have an expectation of privacy inside a private phone booth with the door closed to have your conversation free of government intrusion without a warrant? Yes. Up until this case, though, they used to do it all the time, and then Katz challenged it. And what happens? The Supreme Court comes down and says, no, you have an expectation of privacy. That hence the privacy search. So all a privacy search is that the suspect believes they have an expectation of privacy, that society also considers that expectation of privacy reasonable. And with both of those together, you have a privacy search. If I stand out on the corner of 2nd and Center and I, flap it around, do I have an expectation of privacy? I might think so, but does society agree? Right? And the reason I say that is because we got a really, really, really good homeless population in Casper, and that happens more often than you would think. Okay? They probably think they have an expectation of privacy to do what it is that they do in the bushes over by the Nick, right? But society would not agree. So that's that privacy search. All right, your trespass search is the Antoine Jones case. And what did we used to do, DCI primarily, what did you used to do when you put a tracker on a vehicle? And this, you were prior to Antoine Jones as well, right? You just threw a tracker on. Hey, that car is a suspect vehicle, let's just go put a tracker on it. And then all of a sudden, Antoine Jones represents himself all the way to the Supreme Court and wins and changes the game for us. You can't represent yourself in the Supreme Court, but he argued all the way to the Supreme Court and then had somebody argue for him in the Supreme Court. And he won. All right, so what that did, and I've got a whole section on this, but again, we're pushing through. So I've got police trespass into a protected area with the intent to gather information. If I'm putting a GPS tracker on a vehicle, am I trespassing onto the vehicle? Yes, I'm touching it. It's a physical trespass, and my intent is to gather information. That's a trespass search, okay? I'm going to talk about it just a little bit. Here's why. Who's had a hit-and-run vehicle before? In the cold, and you show up and it's parked in the driveway. And you walk up into the driveway, and what do? You put your hand on the hood. Oh, it's still warm. Did you physically, first of all, we have a curtilage issue, okay? We won't even talk about that. We've been clear on curtilage. Are you physically trespassing onto the vehicle when you touch it? Yes. What is your intent when you touch it? Gather information. Therefore, it is what? A trespass search, okay? Unlawful, unless you have an exigency. What's an exigency on a vehicle parked on the roadway that was involved in a hit and run and the heat's rapidly dissipating? Loss of evidence. You probably get away with that. Plus, if you have probable cause that vehicle was involved in the hit and run, you now have a motor vehicle exception issue and you can do whatever you want. But that's, I encourage you, if you can attend a full class, to do it, because we go super in depth with those things. So I worry that I'm only scratching the surface and it leaves more questions than answers. But also, Blue to Gold has, I'll tag it at the end here, but they've got a YouTube channel that's got 800 plus videos on it. All of these topics are covered in anywhere from like 5-minute to 1-hour segments. There's webinars every single week, for the most part, on different topics. You can go online and see them. I know a lot of people attend these webinars. So you can really get some great training, and it's free. It doesn't cost you a dime, right? They're giving away more free training than you're actually paying for if you calculate out how much free stuff they're doing online. Craig just did a 4-hour webinar for his class, put it out there. It's huge. We have 2 types of seizures when we deal with somebody. Okay? We have a show of authority and a physical seizure. So when I say, hey, you, come here, and you go, okay, and you come here, what do I have? I have a seizure. Why? I have a show of authority with a submission to that authority, all right? So it requires 2 components. They're seized when they would believe they were not free to leave, and they submit to the authority. Okay? If I say, hey, come here, and they run, are they seized? No. There's not a seizure under the 4th Amendment when they run from you. When does the seizure happen under the 4th Amendment? When they stop, or you put hands on them, okay? Or you use force. But here's why this is important. A seizure happens whether you intended for one to happen or not, okay? And you are liable for that seizure. And if you conduct a 4th Amendment seizure without reasonable suspicion or probable cause, whether you intended to or not, you are liable for that. You own it. Which means that if something bad happens and they challenge it or they sue you, you are liable for that. Is there a difference between, hey, can I talk to you real quick? And they go, yeah, sure. Or, hey, come here and talk to me real fast. Do you see how the change of one word creates a seizure? versus the other one. That is why it is very, very important to choose your words carefully. Intentions do not matter. All right, the physical seizure happens when you put hands on somebody. So if I say stop and they run and I chase them and grab them, that's when the seizure happens. Okay? Either one of those creates a seizure under the Fourth Amendment. I thought I had... All right, property is the same way. When you intentionally interfere with their possessory interest in property, you've seized it. So when you take away their ability to use it, it's still seized, okay? It doesn't really change anything. And Chief here in the front is going to be like, oh my God, thank God that's not my department. Was there a Fourth Amendment seizure? Yes, of her property for sure. Do you think he physically grabbed her as well? To get her to stop, to grab the phone? So she was also seized under the Fourth Amendment. If he didn't have reasonable suspicion or probable cause to conduct that seizure, what is he in violation of? Fourth Amendment. An administrative perspective, is that dude on admin leave for doing that?
He doesn't survive long.
He doesn't survive that, right? Maybe he survives it with some discipline, but at the very least, that dude's off the line, and there's an investigation, okay? Do you think she has grounds to sue? At the very least, the Casper Police Department, if that was us, just bought a brand new cell phone, and probably a few other cell phones and electronic devices to go with it. Okay, so do you think that cop woke up that day thinking, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go out and I'm going to violate somebody's Fourth Amendment rights today. I'm going to get fired. I'm going to get sued. I'm going to get my department sued. I'm going to create a video that ends up in a blue to gold class that gets taught to tens of thousands of police officers a year as an example of what not to do. Probably not. What do you think caused that? Pride, ego. And we're going to talk about that later today with de-escalation and duty to intervene. Pride and ego caused that. So what is this again? Consent, recognized exception, or a warrant. What is it not? Okay, we need to be able to explain why we do what we do, period. If we can't explain it, if we cannot lump our actions into one of these, then we cannot do it. So we have to be careful with that. All right, there are lots of recognized exceptions. There are lots of recognized exceptions that we can articulate, but you have to articulate, you have to justify, and you can't just wing it. These are all the things that we're talking about here. You've got safety issues that you can justify. We've got plain view. We've got regulated businesses, alcohol compliance, people who hold liquor licenses, emergency aid. You've got arrest warrants, border searches, hot, fresh pursuit, protective sweeps are huge. We'll cover that later. When you are making in-home custodial arrests, if you are not conducting protective sweeps of the homes that you're making arrests in, you are setting yourself up to be hurt, killed, and you're missing things. Or into fire. There's just a million reasons to do things. If you can't find something, don't do it. I absolutely love consensual encounters. I love consensual encounters because when you try to, I'm not stopping out with like, you know, a guy and his girlfriend walking down the street with their dog. You know, I might drive by, wave at him or something like that, but do you think I pull my car over and get out and go, hey, I want to take time out of my day to come have a conversation with you, Mr. and Mrs. Public Citizen? No. Who do you think I have consensual encounters with? I have consensual encounters with people that go, oh shit, it's the cops. Right? And then I drive around the block and I get out and I'm like, hey man, can I talk to you real quick? And then they go, and then they run or they ditch something, right? That's who I want to talk to because those are the ones in your community committing crimes. All right, but the consensual encounter element is, would a reasonable person believe they could ignore you without legal repercussion? All right, a reasonable person. Your actions, your statements, what you do, what you say, dictates whether or not it's a consensual encounter or not the suspect, right? So if the public can do it, we can do it. But when you create a detention, it's no longer consensual. So when you make it a detention, you better have reasonable suspicion or probable cause. May I speak with you? How are you doing? Do you have a second? One of the things I do all the time is I will roll up on an occupied vehicle in a neighborhood. Hey, what's going on, guys? How you doing tonight? And they're like, shit, right? And I catch them in the act, and now they're nervous and they're scared. And I see their dope, I see whatever, I saw the behaviors. And you know what I say? Hey guys, I'm just out here, it's a high crime neighborhood. We get a lot of burglars and stuff. I saw you guys sitting here, wanted to see if you guys had seen anything suspicious. You guys seen anything weird around here tonight? Seen any weird cars? I'm gonna deputize them, right? Listen, I'm just a dumb cop. I don't know anything. I didn't just see you tuck that gun. I didn't just see you tuck that dope. I want you to help me. Did you see anything weird in this neighborhood? Like anybody maybe using drugs in a car randomly? You guys see anything weird? No? Cool, right? And now I'm waiting on a back, right? I've already called it 1078, give me another unit, right? And I'm waiting on people to go there. And now I'm perception field craft while I'm waiting on more units to get there before I pull them out of the car, right? Because they think they hid their dope in time. But I'm gonna have a consensual encounter. Even though I have probable cause or reasonable suspicion to create the detention, I still treat it like a consensual encounter until I don't need to anymore. Because it looks great on body camera or dash camera. You got a second? Sure, officer, but what's actually happening here? That's what's actually happening. This is what's really going on. Okay, come over here, I wanna talk to you. Is that a detention if they turn around and do it? Yes, absolutely it is. What about this? Walk up on an occupied vehicle, you have no reasonable suspicion, probable cause, windows up, and you say, hey, roll the window down. Can you turn the car off? Detention? Yes, you're giving a command. Roll the window down. Roll the window down, turn the car off. Those are orders. You're a police officer. If you show authority and they comply with your authority, you have created a detention. So, would you mind rolling the window down so I could speak with you? Hey, I can't really hear you. Would it be okay if you rolled the window down? Hey, I can't hear you over the engine. I don't care if it's a Toyota Prius. I can't hear you over the engine. Would you be willing to turn it off? Right? What about spotlights, headlights, things like this? Does that create detention? No. Lights don't create detention. I can do that. Red and blue lights don't automatically create detention. I would not recommend using them when you're trying to have a consensual encounter. But let's say you're on the interstate, the highway or whatever, and you turn on your overheads. If my lights have been turned on for any reason, or I feel like I've created a detention-like scenario without reasonable suspicion, what do you think the first thing I say is? Hey, Sergeant Bigelow, Casper PD, just stopped out with you, wanted to make sure you're okay, saw you on the side of the road. I know my red and blue lights are on, that is only so I don't get run over. You are not being detained, this is not a traffic stop, you're free to leave, okay? Cool, I appreciate that, thank you. Hey, so what are you out here doing, right? I've absolved myself of that detention right away. We have to speak to people. Cop pulls up and blocks a pedestrian as he's walking down the street, blocks his travel, and then gets out and tries to have a consensual encounter. Good or bad? Bad. I've just parked my police car in front of you and made it so you can no longer walk past me without having to change direction. That's a detention. So we don't want to block people. The video is much longer, but for the purpose of consensual encounters, that is like textbook consensual encounter. Again, not a tactics class. I know people are being like, oh man, I can't believe he's talking to that dude in a high crime area sitting in his car. Listen, to do the type of stuff that you do in high crime areas and try to get that perception, sometimes you do have to put yourself at a tactical disadvantage, but it's a tactical disadvantage with a purpose. That's a whole nother class or conversation. Was that encounter consensual? Did he block him in? Did he use red and blue lights? Did he give him any orders? Dude didn't even get out of his car. And then when he does want to get out of his car, what does he say? Hey, is it okay if I come talk to you? That is a consensual encounter textbook, all right? Later he ends up smelling weed. When the guy gets out of the car, he smells odor of marijuana, and he takes action on that. This is a pedestrian. It started as a consensual encounter, turns into a pedestrian stop. It was like 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, something like that, when we were still on nights. All right, so just to set the tone for this one, because I don't have the beginning part of it, we are on another call. And a dude comes around the corner and he goes, fuck, because he sees the cops and he walks the other way. And we went, yeah, this was Carver. And I didn't see it, but Carver did. Carver's my go-getter. He's just, once he catches his tail right now, he doesn't know what to do with it. But we're working on that. But he sees the behavior. So Carver comes up to me and he's like, Sarge, that dude came around the corner. He saw us, cut the other way. And I'm like, let's go talk to him. It's midnight. What time is it? Yeah, almost 1 o'clock in the morning. We should go talk to that guy. So I circle around, I see him, and as he's walking, I drive by and he's doing this. He's walking down the street. So I cut around, and I come around the other side because I want him to, and then I park way in front of him. I park about a half a block in front of him. And then this is what I see when I get out. So there he is right there. What does he do? He cuts. He also has a backpack on, and then he throws it right there. So he just threw the backpack behind the truck. So I'm going to play it one more time because I want you to hear my language. I would argue that once he threw the backpack, avoided me, 1 o'clock in the morning, I probably have reasonable suspicion, but I want to keep it consensual still. I want to build my reasonable suspicion. Okay, so, but I want you to hear the language.
Let's go, man. I'm just coming out to talk to you, man. I just want to make sure you're all right. What are you guys doing tonight? Just having a good time?
What's he just done right there? Jaywalking. He's committed a violation.
Oh, you ditched your bag. Okay, stop. You're not free to leave right now. Okay, whoever's at backpack on the white truck, say it's not his, so it's abandoned. Go ahead and search it.
Do you hear that? He ditched the backpack. He says it's not his. Go find it. Search it. There's a bunch of other factors here. He's got one pocket elephant-eared, and which is indication of what? Rapid removal and throwing of something, right? And then when I called him out on it after we get him in there, he goes, "What are you talking about? It's my soda." And he pulls the soda out of his other pocket, right? Nothing makes sense. 1 o'clock in the morning, this dude sees us, changes direction. Upon me pulling up in front of him, he changes directions again. He takes the backpack off. He cuts back behind a truck. He ditches the backpack. And then he won't talk to me. But the whole time he's saying, "Leave me alone. I don't want to talk to you." And I'm like, "No, it's okay, man. I just wanted to say hi." Is that consensual? Yeah, that's a consensual encounter.
What I want to point out, you did a really good job on there, is if you have the discipline to play chess and not checkers and you wait just a little bit, a lot of times they will give you a violation, which is 10 times stronger, and you have some PC for a walking violation of knowing your traffic offenses is going to be 10 times stronger, and you're not going to have to worry about if you had RAS or if it was truly a consensual encounter. It's so much harder for them to beat in court.
That's exactly it. So I don't play the whole video here, but what happens is I follow him at a distance. I'm not up his ass either, right? I'm following him at a distance. I'm giving him that space. I don't want him to argue that he was up on me, he was going to touch me. Listen, he might run, but I also, do you hear me on the radio? Carver, he's coming around, he's walking northbound, come around to the other side. If he runs, he runs. Cool. But he dipped his bag. So if anything I want on that dude, where's it at? It's in the backpack because he dipped the backpack. So I follow him, and then as soon as he crosses the street and I get that jaywalking violation, I start closing the distance and I said, "Stop, Casper Police Department, you're being detained." And then he waited, and I gave him another command, and finally he stopped, and he turned, he's like, "Why are you fucking with me?" That's right. Intimidation tactics. So ultimately, what do you think's in the bag? Dope, right? He didn't have warrants, but he had dope in the bag, because that's what he dipped. If he had warrants and he knew it, he probably would have run. He wouldn't have dipped the bag. But, and you hear me get on the radio and say, "Hey, go find that bag. He says it's not his. Go search it." So this applies to consensual encounters and abandonment, right? I've consensually encountered him based on behavior, and what put me in his presence? Carver, seeing behavior, relaying that behavior to me, and then us acting on that behavior, right? And then the bag is abandoned. I don't need his consent anymore. It's a win-win all day long, okay? So he goes to jail. That's a win, and that is 100% what Craig was talking about yesterday, but this is the search and seizure component of that. That is a consensual encounter with an abandoned backpack. That is how you get criminals off your street. That guy is a common, consistent problem with us in Casper. He's homeless, he's crazy, he's a drug addict, he's a thief, and he's violent. What's that? And he's an arson. He sets stuff on fire. So any chance we can get that guy off the street, even for the night, it's a win for us, all right? Can we ask people during a consensual encounter to show their hands? Yeah, we can ask. We can ask anything. We can ask them if they want to play patty cake, right? We can ask anything we want, right? But if they say, "Nah, I'm not taking my hands out of my pockets," what are your options? Nothing. Disengage. Leave. But you can't force somebody during a consensual encounter to remove their hands from their pockets. If they're detained, can you? Yes, and a refusal to remove your hands during a detention would rise to what? You're going to end up in handcuffs. Okay, but this is not a detention, so you can't force it. It's your choice to incur the risk or not at that point. You must walk away. All right, can we ask people for identification? Sure, we can ask anybody for ID. We can ask anybody we want for identification. Can we compel identification? With reasonable suspicion or probable cause. That is it. Okay, so I ask people all the time for identification. I get your ID on a consensual encounter, and then I hold on to it for an extended period of time. Bad idea. Blue to Gold, within the last year or so, started doing the AI artwork a lot to really like kind of personalize all the slides. This slide is the most egregious slide I've ever seen. I just want you to know that as a head Blue to Gold guy. Right? Holding on to IDs. Every single time I put it up, I just put a disclaimer out there. I'm like, and next up, my favorite slide in this PowerPoint. Right? So holding on to IDs is like a hot potato. It will get you burned. So on a consensual encounter, take the ID, run it, give it back. Because if you hold on to it, you could create detention because do you feel free to leave if the police officer is holding on to your ID? No, that is a factor they'll use. Consent to search. When we want consent, it must be voluntary. They must have the authority, and you must do it within the scope. So voluntary consent just means they had a choice in the matter, it wasn't coerced, all right? It's very simple. Do you mind if I search? I hate that term. Do you mind if I search? Do you mind if I punch you in the face? Yes. So yes, I can punch you in the face? No. So you don't mind if I punch you in the face. Do you see what happens? Do you mind is an awful question. Can I search you? Can I search your car? Can I search you for contraband? Do you have any weapons on you? No. Can I search you? Can I search your car from bumper to bumper and everything inside? Stop with the mind game. Stop with the, can I take a quick peek? Can I just get a quick peek in there? No big deal, just a little peek, little peekaboo, right? Because then you do something, you gotta say what you mean what you say. That is how we operate on the street. When you try to play games, you create problems. So do you mind is awful. I hate do you mind. But we gotta consider a few things. Are we making threats or misrepresentations when we're getting consent? Give me consent to search your car, I'm gonna write you a ticket for every single violation I watched you make today. Is that coercion? Yes. I'm trading consent for tickets. We can't do that. All right, what about shows of force? Don't be aggressive, right? We don't want to be aggressive when we're asking for consent. You don't want to get 5 cops standing around overbearingly asking for consent, right? You get 5 cops there, you create a show of force. You don't want that. Consent should be nice. It is exactly what it is. It's consensual, okay? We can tell legal truths. Who's heard this one before? Once you mention a search warrant, consent is no longer valid and you have to get a warrant. Who's heard it? Nobody? Nobody wants to admit it. Liars. There's liars in this room, right? Once you mention a search warrant, it doesn't mean that you have to get a search warrant. Legal truths are okay. So if you share a legal option with somebody and it's truthful and it's respectful and it's in a question format, that does not convert something to non-consensual. It's very simple. Hey, I smell the odor of marijuana coming out of the apartment. I'm not super worried about marijuana. I'd like your consent to go in. I still have to take action on that. I'd like to go in, search the apartment for marijuana. Listen, if all that's in here is a little small user quantities, could result in anything from a warning, and we'll destroy it, up to maybe a citation. If it's a small quantity, I'm not trying to take you to jail. If it's a big quantity or you got other stuff in here, we'll have to deal with that. Could result in other things. Is that the truth? Yes, that is the truth. And then they say what? No, I don't want you to do it. What's the next word out of your mouth? Okay, no problem. You're well within your constitutional rights to refuse consent. However, I am within my rights to apply for a search warrant, and that's what I'm going to do. So with that said, I'm going to detain you. I'm going to freeze the home. You're not free to go back in. I'm going to apply for a search warrant with a judge. If a judge grants me that search warrant, then I'm going to come back and execute the search warrant based on the scope that the judge gives if it's issued, okay? It could take 15, 20, 30 minutes to get the warrant. Is that the truth? Yes. And then they go, man, okay, never mind. It's just a little bit of weed, I'm not worried about it. I'll let you search the house. How many in this room at that point are like, nope, too late, you already said no, so we're getting a warrant? Right, I used to think that. No longer. The statement that I'm gonna make at that point is, all right, cool, awesome. I just wanna make sure you understand then that you are giving me consent to enter the home. Yes. Search for marijuana? Yes. You understand you don't have to give me consent? Do you feel as though I've coerced you in any way into giving me consent? No, and you understand you can revoke or change consent at any time? Yes. Okay, cool. Let's do it. How are you going to argue that later in court, that it was coerced? So just because you said warrant doesn't mean you have to get one, okay? But in this case, they told her that, hey, if you live with a drug dealer, you could lose your kids, they could take away your house, and then try to get consent based on the threats. And she consented. Do you think that was good or bad? Bad, right? They basically threatened her house and her kids in order to get consent. We can't do that. Denied consent, said they'd seek a search warrant, changed the mind, consented, good all day. Legal truths, not a big deal. All right, what about allowing a person to watch? Or shows of force, initially rape suspect gets woken up with 4 or 5 police officers standing in the room. They force the wife to leave the room and they stand over him and ask for consent. That's pretty coercive. Okay, so we don't want to do that. Allowing them to watch the search is huge. Right, hey, I want consent to search your car, have them stand there. If it's not a danger, if they're not a threat, let them stand there with another officer and watch you search. Because if they watch you do something and they don't object to it after they've consented, it's really hard for them in court to come back later and say, I didn't actually want them to do that. Because the courts are going to say, well, maybe so, but you watched them do it and never said a word. Therefore, you implied that it was okay. And there's many cases on that, as long as it's within reason. So like the case here is they got consent to search the car, and it had a refrigerated trailer on it. Canine handler puts his dog up in the actual refrigerated compartment. Dog alerts, and they find drugs. And the guy says, well, I said they could search the car, but I didn't say they could put a dog inside of it. That was his argument. And what do you think the court said? You stood there and watched them. You gave them consent, and then you watched them search it, and you watched them put the dog in it, and you never objected. Implied that it was okay, we're going to uphold the consent. So that proved it. Denying consent, anybody ever heard of the Pirtle warning? Indiana has a Pirtle warning. Some states have it. All it is it's like Miranda for consent. You're giving me consent? Yes. And you understand you don't have to give consent? Yes. And you understand you can revoke consent anytime, change? Right? I like the Pirtle warnings, particularly if there's been any coercive factor. So if I ask for consent and you say yes and I haven't had anything coercive, then I'll leave it at that. But if I ask for consent after there's been something coercive in nature, there's 5 cops standing around, maybe there was some force that got used, so they're sitting in handcuffs, I might give that advisement that just says you can revoke consent, you can refuse consent, because it looks really good. I don't want to get behind, but I've got a good one that I won in municipal court, same concept, and I had her on camera agreeing to consent after a Pirtle advisement, and the court specifically said it in court, your suppression hearing is denied. Your suppression is denied because you specifically gave consent and then agreed that you were not being coerced. And then level of intrusion matters, all right? So understand that it can be withdrawn anytime. So if somebody says stop, the answer is stop, right? What's our level of intrusion? If I ask for consent to search the trunk of your car, what can I search? Trunk of your car, okay? Why this matters, though, is destructive elements. So what if I have a destruction of something? What if I ask to search your car and then I rip open presents in the process of searching without expressed consent to open presents? Not good. So anything that renders it useless for its intended purpose without consent is not going to be upheld. All right, and then common authority requires that somebody can ask for consent. Who can consent to the search of your person? You. He cannot. He has no common authority over you. Who's got a backpack in here right now in front of him? Who can give consent on your backpack? You. Can she give consent on your backpack? No. Oh, yeah, if you give her the backpack and say, hey, will you hold on to this for me? She now has common authority over it, right? So just means that the consenting party could do it the same as you could. So joint ownership, joint access, or control. Again, if you attend the full class, we've got lots and lots of time on this one. I just don't want to get super behind. Can the consenter do the search? If so, then you can do the same search. They can give you consent to do it. You can search my husband's dresser. The wife says you can. Typically, that's going to be allowed because the husband and the wife have access to it. Now, what if the husband says no and the wife says yes? Then you can't, right? It's done. But what if you arrest the husband on domestic battery, take him to jail, and after he's on his way to jail, the wife says, now that he's gone, now you can search it? Yes or no? Yes. Okay, and I know people initially are like, well, he already said no, so you can't. But I want you to read this. This is huge. Fernandez is huge on this one, and it makes sense when you read it. But it says, the person, or we will not give someone in the wife's position or take away their ability to allow the police to enter the home. That would show disrespect for independence, and having already been beaten, it would then bar her from controlling access to her own home until he chose to relent. The Fourth Amendment does not give him that power. Do you understand? Like, when you read that, you're like, okay, it makes sense. So a non-consenting person, when they are removed from a situation, lawfully, mind you, then the other person can give consent. Their presence is required, and once they're gone, they have no say. Again, I could spend a lot of time on that. We're just pushing through some things. So what you ask to search defines the scope. Can I pat you down for weapons? What is a pat down? Outer layer of clothing, right? So I don't ever ask for permission to pat. What do you think I say? Can I search you? I say, hey, do you got any weapons on you, anything that could hurt me in the process of encounter? None. Is it okay if I search you? And if they say yes, I'm searching them. I've asked to search. Am I doing a little bit of a mind game? Of course I am, but I'm asking to search. Now, what if while I'm searching him and I go into the pockets, he's like, whoa, I didn't tell you to go in my pockets. Is he revoking? Yeah, so what do I have to do? I'm done. And then I will backtrack and say, I thought you said I could search you. He'd be like, I told you could search me for weapons. Okay, well, can I keep searching you for weapons? You know what I mean? That's the conversation we have. Or then I'll say, okay, well, can I pat you down for, you know what I mean? That's the route we're going. But most people, once they've consented and you start doing it, will not revoke that consent. Sometimes they might. But there's a big difference between can I search you versus can I pat you. So I don't like asking for permission to pat because you're limiting your consent right off the bat. Okay, when you find what you want, it's automatically over. So if I say, can I search your car for the stolen iPad? And you say yes, and then I find the stolen iPad, can I continue searching? No, we're done. And I know I'm pushing here really quick, but I got just a smidge behind. So destructive searches require probable cause. So I know this sounds really stupid, but the cops got consent to search a car. While they were searching the car, they opened up a case of beer, ripped it open, and it could no longer hold beer the way it was intended, but they found drugs inside of it. It got thrown out because the cops did not have consent to destroy the case of beer. They rendered the case of beer useless for its intended purpose, which is to hold beer. That's a destructive search. You don't have the right to destroy my property without my permission. So it was absolutely rendered it useless, evidence suppressed. You see how serious they are about this stuff? You see how little things get you hemmed up sometimes? Cop pulls the air vent out, doesn't damage it, doesn't break it, it just pops out. Good or bad? Good. It'll be good as long as you're not doing damage. If I have probable cause, I'll do whatever I want within reason, right? But on consent, you got to be really, really, really polite on consent. An investigative detention is like a block of melting ice. The duration of the stop lasts as long as what? Reasonably necessary. You either develop probable cause, make the arrest, or you release. And how long is that? Could be 3 minutes, could be 5 hours. It depends on your investigation. It depends on what you're doing, right? So once your suspicions have been dispelled, the stop is over. They must be released. It must be converted to a consensual encounter. A cop stops a kid for a curfew violation. He looks young. He provides an ID. Kid is obviously 21 years old by ID. The cop retains the ID, continues to detain him, runs the name, and then later, when they look at this, he says, well, California IDs are fake a lot, so that's why I held on to the ID. I just wanted to run it and make sure it was real. Once his suspicion was quelled, as in he's 21 years old, could he be detained any longer? No, it's over. It is done. The stop is over. All right? I don't know if I put it in here in the traffic stops. I will show you a video. I have one from recently. It was exactly that. And I think it's in the traffic stop section. So protective sweeps you can conduct during an in-home arrest. I do want to cover this at length because I really want you guys to start doing this. Okay? When you make a custodial arrest inside of a home, you have the outright authority to conduct protective sweeps inside that home. Period. It is well established, and there is no reason why you should not be doing this for your safety and the safety of the other officers inside the home, okay? When you arrest somebody inside of a home, you have 3 zones that are covered under the Fourth Amendment. The first one is immediate control, okay? That is the immediate control. That is automatic. So they're sitting on a couch, you pick them up, you arrest them, you can search the immediate area for people, weapons, contraband related to the arrest. So that means you can absolutely check the couch, you can check the drawers, you can check the immediate area. Immediate area is not lunge distance, it's within reasonable distance. So if you're arresting somebody in the living room, you get the living room. It doesn't necessarily mean you're on hands and knees climbing underneath the hutch, right? Or opening up little sunglass cases. You got to use common sense on this. But this allows you to make sure that there are not people waiting in the home to hurt you. So we can search for weapons, evidence, means of escape in the immediate area of an arrest we make inside of a home. Okay, period. The second area, I got ahead of it, is adjacent areas. Adjacent areas would be hallways, bedrooms, bathrooms, the kitchen, closets. This is also automatic. If I arrest you in your living room and you've got multiple officers, you should have 2 officers making the arrest and another officer should be checking the hallways, opening up a door, check it. You should absolutely be doing that. I don't know why, I don't know where we have fallen off on this. But when you're arresting people inside of a home, has any cop in the history of law enforcement ever been ambushed by somebody waiting inside the home to prevent the arrest? Yes. As they're walking them out the door, they get shot. People come out of the woodwork and fight them. You should absolutely be conducting. But when you're doing adjacent areas, what are you looking for? People in people-sized places. So if I'm pulling body camera footage on my team and they're making an arrest at home, I better be seeing at least one cop checking adjacent areas, making sure there's nobody in there waiting to do harm. All right, so you can search the areas adjacent to the arrest, but you can look for people in people-sized places, period. Why are we not doing this? Who's doing this routinely in here? Nobody. Yeah, Craig, of course Craig's doing it. Who's going to start doing it? Everybody's like, I don't know if I like that slide. I feel it. I feel it in the room. We can talk about it later. All right, so US v. Ford. All right, after arresting the occupant in a hallway, police entered an adjacent room and they saw firearm parts on the bed. But then they lifted the mattress up. The court said that the adjacent room and the firearm parts on the bed was good, lawful, protective sweep, but they looked under the mattress, not good, okay? We can search for people in other areas of the home, like basements, second floors, garages, outbuildings, but we have to have specific and articulable facts. This is where the additional requirements come in. You have to be able to articulate that somebody is harboring somebody or that there's an individual danger. This is reserved for your trap houses. Your nasty houses that always have people coming and going, people hiding in basements. You guys know what houses those are. I don't want to spend a lot of time on that. I'm happy to talk about it later. All of those facts justify protective sweeps, okay? Plain view seizure. We need to have lawful presence, immediately apparent, and lawful access. Presence means I'm present inside the home, I see that it's drugs, and that I have lawful access to where it's at. This is how you make a plain view seizure. If you don't have those 3 components, you can't do it. So plain view is simply right to be, right to see, smell and hearing. That's it. If I see drugs through a window inside of a house and I'm lawfully present on the porch, am I lawfully present? Yes. Do I recognize it immediately as contraband? Yes, but do I have lawful access yet? No, so I can't go in and seize it. What could I do? Write a warrant with that information, okay? Or if they open the door and let me in and I go inside of the house, now could I seize it? Yes. Okay. That jet ski is stolen for the purposes of this. You drive by and you see it, you know it's a stolen jet ski. Are you lawfully present on the street? Yes. Do I recognize it immediately as contraband? What am I missing? Lawful access. So I cannot go in and grab that jet ski, right? The same thing would apply if I saw drugs on the floor of that garage. Same thing would apply if I saw a gun on the floor of that garage that had been used in a homicide. Now, let's say I do see drugs there instead, and somebody comes out, sees me, and they go to grab the drugs. Now what do I have? Exigency. Can I make entry to prevent the destruction? All day. But I have to do what? Articulate it. Because we suck at articulating stuff. We have to be better at that. Crime scene should be common sense. You need a warrant or consent once the exigency is over. We can respond to the homicide, we can do what we need to do, but once the exigency is over, you must get a warrant or consent. They processed a homicide scene for 4 days in this case without a warrant. What do you think happened? Everything they got on that homicide scene thrown out because they did it without a warrant. Traffic stop portion of this now, the reasonable suspicion, consent, it's all the same when it comes to vehicles. It's just a little different how you get in there, right? So I've cut out a lot of the the consent. I've cut out a lot of the reasonable suspicion side of the traffic stop portion of this because you already got that on that first section. But the biggest thing we have to understand with vehicles is some history. So major cases right off the bat is Carroll v. U.S. Who's heard of Carroll? Right, everybody's heard of Carroll. Okay, so what Carroll says is that if you have probable cause to believe that there is evidence or contraband inside of a vehicle, you can search that vehicle without a warrant as long as the vehicle is not on curtilage, right? And it's readily mobile. And it moves forward, right? So I'm not going to get, we do a whole history lesson, but again, I apologize in advance that we're moving really fast through this. I would strongly encourage you guys to attend any of the online webinars or come to the full class. I would love to have you there. I just give you so much more. Chambers v. Maroney, okay? You've got cases that start moving forward. So the thing about Chambers v. Maroney is it sets the tone for somebody came up and said, well, we get a warrant if the vehicle's not likely to be driven away. Right, and that is a common thing that I hear. Again, I am not going to tell you shouldn't do that. That's not what this class is about. There are best practices in many cases, but I do want to set the foundation. If you have probable cause, it does not matter if the vehicle is likely to be driven away or not, ever. The only things the courts care about is that a vehicle is inherently mobile. So Chambers v. Morona said that you don't have to wait for a warrant. Even if you have time to get a warrant, you don't need a warrant. You could search it under PC. All right, and then there are cases that come out after that. And Michigan v. Thomas said that it doesn't matter if the car is likely to be driven away or not. Once you have PC, if it's inherently mobile, that just means it's a vehicle, it can be searched. Okay, and then you've got cases that come out after that. They searched a car after it was taken to impound 38 days later. They had probable cause, they impounded the car, they searched it 38 days later, the courts upheld the search because the vehicle is inherently mobile. Is it likely to be driven away? No. But it's inherently mobile. That is the only thing that matters. Disclaimer, if you have a vehicle in your impound lot for 38 days, get a warrant, okay? That is what we will teach you at the Blue to Gold. That Blue to Gold standard is, if you have a vehicle in your impound lot for 38 days, you had plenty of time to get a warrant. Why? Do you need it right now? No. But I really like the vehicle exception, and there are individual states taking it away. I don't want to lose the vehicle exception. So get the warrant, right? Didn't matter that the vehicle could be driven away, but we don't want to lose it, so get the warrant. I'm happy to have conversations about this later too. I love the vehicle exception, and I fight more battles on that than anything else, and I do love to fight me some battles. So, South Dakota v. Opperman, all right, this is where you get your inventories from. All right, this is where vehicle inventories happen. Who's heard this? Vehicle inventories aren't searches. Who's heard that? Who believes that? Vehicle inventories are searches. The Supreme Court calls them searches. Stop trying to say they're not searches because you think somewhere along the lines of you say, well, if we don't call it a search, nobody will know. It's still a search. It's absolutely a search. So you can't get around the Fourth Amendment by doing a vehicle inventory and then go, it's not a search though. It is a search, okay? And it is still bound underneath the Fourth Amendment. But the vehicle inventory is a community caretaking exception under CREW, right? Interesting fact about Opperman, I got a call from another sergeant last week, and he's like, hey dude, we inventoried a vehicle, we towed it. It was locked, and we had the tow truck company unlock it. And now I'm worried because I think that we unlocked it and we were in the wrong. And I was like, oh, cool story, bro. Opperman, the case that gave us inventories, the vehicle was locked and the tow truck company opened it. So you're good. And he's like, oh, thank God. I was panicking because we had like 3 ounces in the car. Right, it was uric. He was freaking out. He overthought it. Okay, Opperman's great. I'm not going to get into depth because I'm trying to push through this. I could spend an hour on inventories. The biggest thing is you got to have policies with it. All right, California v. Carney starts applying vehicle inventories to RVs. Okay, interesting fact, vehicle inventories, probable cause searches apply to every single vehicle that exists. Boats, airplanes, RVs, campers, trailers, cars, trucks, all of it. Okay, so there is a case for everything. It does not take the inherent mobility of the vehicle away simply because the vehicle is secured, and if the vehicle is used for transportation, you're good. All right, who's done a PC search on an airplane? Anybody? I want that. I just haven't got there yet. All right, so any questions on vehicle inventories or the motor vehicle exception? Again, that should be 2 hours in of itself. I just can't do that for you guys today. Yes. We were talking about that earlier with like campgrounds. I think that you create an expectation of privacy when you park your vehicle in an area that you've rented that should be free from government intrusion. So I'm going to be inclined, and what I teach and push on that is if it's parked on a campground, it's parked on an area where there's an expectation of privacy, a short-term rental, we probably need to start treating that more like curtilage. And I would say that in order to search a vehicle with probable cause, you have to have lawful access, right? So if you don't have lawful access to that, then I would steer clear of doing that. Is that what you're looking for? Yeah, on the roadway you're fine, but you really start blurring the lines between curtilage when you rent it. The same as I can't go into your hotel room simply because it's a short-term rental. What about making the traffic stop? My favorite thing in the whole wide world. All day yesterday, pretext stops. I will tell you that the type of police officer I don't make regular traffic stops. I know it sounds bad, but if you drive past me at 20 miles an hour the speed limit, and you're 2 and 10, and you don't care that I'm there, and you see me and you go, oh God, I was speeding a little bit, and you slow down, and then you give me the little wave, and you keep driving by, I'm not gonna pull you over. Now for the traffic guys in the room, you're freaking out right now. I know, I'm sorry, I'm not stopping you. If you drive past me at 3 miles an hour over the speed limit, and you give me behavior, you're getting pulled over. So do you think I make pretext stops? Every single one of them is a pretext stop. Founded on what? A violation. Criminal behavior, everything you just learned yesterday, with a detention supported by a violation. Do the courts care? Anybody think so? No. The courts do not care about pretext stops. Individual states, very left-leaning states, are starting to try and outlaw pretext stops through laws that say that anything found during the course of a traffic stop for these minor infractions can't be used. That's a bunch of BS, and I bet you it swings back the other way. It's a legislative change, it'll swing. In Wyoming, it's still illegal to commit crime here in Wyoming, so I don't see legislation changing like that. And any power that the director has there, he'd be standing up in front of legislation, losing his mind if they tried to make laws like that, I would imagine. So what it matters is, can you lawfully do it? Can I make the traffic stop for a license plate light? Yes. Does it matter that I also made the stop and got my attention grabbed by the fact that they were distancing and eye blocking and turning off on the side streets? No, they don't care. All right, so pretext stops are absolutely unequivocally legal. RIN v. US is the case that governs that, all right? Outside of the context of inventory search or administrative inspection, an officer's motive does not invalidate a stop as long as it is based on reasonable suspicion or probable cause. Doesn't matter why you stopped them with your motive, as long as you had a valid reason to make the stop. Pretext? Yeah, it's absolutely a pretext stop. I make pretext stops all day long with calls from DCI. Right? Hey, we got a guy, we're looking for this, we need it walled off. If you can get a stop on him, figure out who they are, working as something, that'd be great, but we don't want them to know about the investigation. Constantly. So I stop them for the license plate light. You think, anybody in this room think I care about a broken windshield? Any troopers in here? You guys care about broken windshield and tent? Oh yeah. Don't even get me started about tent, right? You think I care about license plate lights? Broken windshields? You think I care if you signaled 30 feet before the turn instead of 100 feet before the turn? No. But is it a lawful reason to make a traffic stop? Yes. There's a case that just came out of Casper with the Wyoming Supreme Court, Ben Bedke, our very own Ben Bedke. Love that guy. He's got great case law. He stopped a dude who turned his signal on about 20 feet before the turn, but then sat at the stop sign for like 20 seconds with his signal on, and he stopped him for failing to signal 100 feet prior to the turn. And it went all the way to the Wyoming Supreme Court because they said, well, it was on for 20 seconds. And the Wyoming Supreme Court said, doesn't matter. Case law, or the legislation has made it clear, you will signal 100 feet prior to the turn. It doesn't say 30 seconds before the turn. Therefore, it was a valid stop. It was upheld. So anybody in this room that thinks making traffic stops for minor infractions like that is not worthwhile, I implore you to change your mindset, because that is how we get criminals off the street. We don't get criminals off the street by waiting for DCI to work an investigation and then give you a wall stop. We get them off the street by making minor traffic stops based on minor infractions, using behavior that you learned yesterday, and then work it into a lawful arrest. And we do that every single day. So these are some of my videos right here. This one's important to me. I'm going to start over just so you get it. I pulled up to a stop sign. He pulled up to the stop sign. So we're looking at each other at the stop sign. And he went, oh shit, it's the cops. And I went, oh, that's the reaction I wanted to see. And then the girl immediately phoned. And I'm watching him, and he sits there, and I sit there, and I'm like, he's not going to come across the intersection. Scared to death. There's no cars. It's the middle of the night, and he won't clear the intersection. So he stopped at the stop sign, and I'm like, I'll sit here all night. I'm going to sit here. I'm going to sit here until he moves. We sat there for 20 seconds before he finally was like, all right, and I could see him go like, fuck, I got to do something. So he drives, and he slow rolls across the intersection. As he drives past me, he does this. Right? And I see the girl buried. So this is where I flip around. So as I flip around, I see in my side mirror, he hauls ass to this intersection. He's already made the turn before I even get turned around. So he's already made it to that before he made the turn. And guess what he didn't do that I saw in my rearview mirror, or my side mirror? He didn't signal. I signaled though, right? If the chief's not here, so we're okay. And now you see his brake lights? He's trying to get away from me. Stop, signal comes on, last minute. But he had stopped. He wasn't sure which way he was going to go. Signal came on last minute. Shit, it's the cops. I got to do something. So he makes the turn. I make the turn. He's like, oh, he's following me. I got to cut into an alley. So he cuts into an alley. I already got violations. I make the stop. Look how far we drive before he pulls over. I've already called for more units. I've already called 1078. Give me more units. Because I know he's trying to hide something. I don't know if he's taking me into an ambush or what at this point. But see how long we roll?
Good evening, Officer Bigelow, Casper Police Department. Hey, the reason why I'm stopping you tonight, I know, it's, okay, well, I won't shine it right in your eyes.
Oh, it's bright. I have seizures.
Is when you turned back here onto Willow, you signaled right when you pulled up the stop.
Oh, can I get your name? Oh, you don't have it? No problem. I'll write it down. All the same Craig stuff. That's why I'm such a Craig fanboy. Anyways, we'll move on to the next one. So what you see, though, in there is I make that contact. He's like, oh, I don't have a driver's license on me. I'm like, no big deal, man. I'll write it down. And then he goes, well, actually, man, I'm going to be honest. I'm suspended. So now I own it already, right? I already know no matter what, we're going in that direction. He's got an ounce under the seat. That's why he slow rolled me. He's got an ounce under the seat. Inside the car, he's got motel, hotel, and oh no, I do want you guys to see this because I take it all the way to the end. Sorry, we're gonna. Yeah. All right, we are gonna push through that. Well, I'm talking about it. So we get to the end. We get the information inside the car to show that he had just gotten a hotel room and that he had just left there. The information he gives on the side of the road gives us enough to write the warrant for the hotel room. You were on this, weren't you, Mikey, that night? You guys both were. I get enough information on the stop to get a warrant for his hotel room. We go down, hit the hotel room. We find a £1/4 pound inside the hotel room packaging material. Inside the hotel room, we get enough information to start working him. DCI absolutely blows it out of the water with a suspect interview. Gets him to completely snitch and rat, gives up his source that night. These people are completely off the radar, unknown to us until that point. We get enough off that, and we work cooperation. We hit another hotel room about 3 hours after this traffic stop and pulled 4 pounds, 10,000 fentanyl pills, 15 grand, and like 6 guns, and thousands and thousands and thousands of rounds of ammunition. And this was a turn signal based on behavior. So when I'm telling you that you should be making minor traffic stops and working them to their logical conclusion, this is why. This doesn't happen every night, but I'm super proud of this one because it was a stop and then it was a lot of people that came together to make it work.
Yeah, you're fine. You just have to signal 100 feet prior to the turn. Okay, you got a driver's license on you, sir? Okay, what's your name? Andrew Fernandez, what's your name?
Do you see how polite? I'm nice, I'm polite. I know damn well that there's drugs, guns, warrants in this car, but I am polite. I'm nice. I'm friendly.
Your house? Okay, where's your house at?
Oh, we're coming from my house. No, you're not. You're coming from your hotel room that's got another £1/4 pound in it.
All right, where are you guys going?
Oh, we're just going to my buddy's house over here somewhere. That's why we're driving in circles.
Hey, is this your vehicle registered to you?
But for the purposes of this class, what am I doing right now? I'm developing reasonable suspicion. His travel plans don't make sense. His driving doesn't make sense. He's nervous. His story automatically didn't match hers. He's suspended, so now I have a violation to extend beyond that. He's definitely not driving the car. In my mind, I'm already thinking I got a canine coming, but I'm definitely going to take him to jail. So I'm going to tow the car. It doesn't have insurance. I'm going to get into the car through an inventory if I don't have a dog. Right? I have all of these other things happening in my mind for how I'm lawfully going to move this forward.
Yeah, go ahead, man. Yeah, no problem.
Leave your bag in the car.
I just don't know if
You're not getting out of the car with a bag. And then we'll just push this one real quick.
yeah, if you walk right over here for me.
And then it ends here in a second. But I want you guys to see the hit on the room a little bit later.
Yeah, if you just hang out with this officer right here, I appreciate you, okay?
Do you see? I appreciate you. Thank you so much for your compliance.
You said you're suspended? Okay.
And then here's the hit on the room. Paschke spun tackled the dude as he exited because we knew he was going to have a gun. Now, people say, do you not have to knock and announce? Yeah, you have to knock and announce, unless what? They've already opened the door and came out. You think we did that on purpose? Of course we did. I called from the front desk and said, hey, this is Jake down at the front desk. Your credit card's got declined, man. I need you to come down and reauthorize that for me, otherwise we've got to kick you out. And he's like, I'll be down in a second. So he walked out of the room at 3 o'clock in the morning to go reauthorize his card, and he got bum tackled by Paschke, and then we entered the room based on the warrant, right? He had a gun on him. He had a gun on him to walk down and reauthorize his card. So that tells you who we're dealing with. They were in our community, right, in Casper, Wyoming. And these people are in your community because guess where they were at before that? Wheatland. Who's in the Wheatland area? Nobody? Same concept, though. These guys are everywhere. Another pretext stop. Again, why it's important, because I'm developing reasonable suspicion before the stop. I see the behavior, and do you think I articulate all of this in my report? Absolutely I do. Watches me, hypervigilance, follows me with the head, sits up in their seat. He's got a broken taillight. I can see white coming through the broken taillight. Do I have a violation already? Yes, so I already own the violation. I flip around on him. As soon as I flip around, where's he at? 2 blocks ahead already. He's sped up, he's distanced, he's trying to get away from me. So now I'm trying to catch up. Do you think all this is in my report for reasonable suspicion? Yes. We have to write our reports. What did he just do? You guys were in class yesterday. Dipped a side street. I think when I come around the corner, he's already going to be turning into another side street or gone, or self-stops. And guess what? More than 18 inches away from the curb, parking violation. Do you see how these little things matter? It's a parking violation. So if I don't have the taillight, I have a parking violation. He's exiting the car. Before I get up to him, hey bro, hop back in the car for me. My car died, even though it's still running. Get back in. He complies, he gets back in. He hadn't crossed that threshold, so I keep him inside the car. And then that's what we find inside the car on that stop. And also, we get enough information to work it, hit the house the next day, and we find more drugs, more guns, and a 9-year-old child living in the trap house with all these tweakers that we took protective custody of. No doubt being molested, having meth smoked around her. All from what? Behavior. But if I lose my traffic stop because I didn't have reasonable suspicion, what do I lose long term? All of this. Little things that I like to show. Car went past me like 34 miles an hour, but they were scared to death when they went past me. I flip around, they haul ass. Do you see the car turn up there? Watch this. This one's perfect. It was kids that were drunk. It was like 19-year-olds that were drunk driving. But the behavior is the same. I come around the corner, look, they've already turned onto that side street. So I already see them, and I already have violations. I've got the speeding violation. I come around the corner, watch this. Boom, pull to the side, blackout, lights off. Not today, boys. I'm too good, right? That's the thought process there. That's what I'm looking for. So I don't know what I have. I don't know if they just committed a homicide. I don't know if they've got drugs in the car. It's 2 19-year-olds that have been drinking. They're underage drinking. One of them's drunk driving. I don't know that. But that's behavior. So do you see the behavior? But what he teaches yesterday is how to identify the behavior. What I'm telling you is that you have to document that behavior. You have to build reasonable suspicion. You can't say, I saw a car doing 32 miles an hour, I flipped around on it, stopped it, and then I extended the stop without articulation. You have to say that they did this, and this, and this, and this, and I had this, and I had this, and I had this, and I know in my training experience this, and that's how I justified the extension. Okay, the scope of a traffic stop is what matters here. We make a traffic stop. Our scope ends when the traffic stop is completed. If I am only stopping cars for license plate lights, and I don't articulate any other behavior, any other reasonable suspicion, how long can that stop last? 10, 15 minutes at most? But when I've got pages of information justifying the extension before I even make contact, do you think a court's more inclined to be like, yeah, that officer clearly has this and his experience does this and he's had this training and he routinely makes stops like this and finds XYZ? Yes. It's legally defensible. We remember the melting ice cube, right? So the traffic stop ends when we release the driver or a reasonable amount of time has elapsed. We can't extend the stop until we have developed reasonable suspicion, or we do it with consent. So here's a bicycle traffic stop. I just guys wanted you to see this one because there's an extension on this one. Okay? Do you think I care that a bicycle doesn't have a headlight on it? Am I going to stop you on a bicycle in a high crime area with no headlight? Absolutely I am. So same concept here. Do you see guy on a bicycle? He sees me, what's he do? Oh shit, it's police. So he cuts down the side seat. So I roll up to the stop sign and I watch. I just want to see what he's doing. And what do you think he's doing? Looking. So once I realize, yeah, this dude really cares about me, I flip around, or I make the turn, and I come up on him. The reason why I'm showing you this, I'm not trying to toot my own horn or like compete with Craig's class, but I want you to understand my reasonable suspicion, because that's what this is about. So I make the stop, he slow rolls me. He's slow rolling me on a bicycle. And then what's he do with the bicycle? He blocks me with it.
Yeah, the flashlight doesn't quite count, man. That's it.
But I'm friendly. Man, it's just a headlight.
I just need an idea. It's basically a traffic stop, okay?
This was last month.
Okay, what's your name? Okay, you're all right, man. Like I said, I'm not out here. I'm not out here writing tickets, okay? That's not what I'm doing. It's more of a safety deal, okay? I smell a little bit of alcohol. Been had some drinks tonight. All right, I'm not trying. Ever been pulled over on a bicycle before? Really? We're crazy out here, aren't we? Any guns, knives, weapons on you like that? Is it okay if I pat you down, make sure you have any weapons? You don't have any weapons? Is it okay if I check you, make sure? Don't reach in your pockets.
He doesn't give me an answer. I'm not on probation. Why do you want to pat me down? He doesn't give me an answer, yes or no.
Is it okay if I just pat you down and make sure you don't have any weapons? Okay.
So I finally get consent to pat him down. So now I'm patting him down for weapons. But I'm articulating all of this. And I've got a slide at the end of this where I'm going to show you what I put in my report, how I articulated reasonable suspicion. Because this case, I don't know where this case is going to go. It may go federal, it may not. This case went federal. So I can promise you AUSAs are looking really hard at reports from us as to whether or not they'll take it. DCI is well aware of like the standards that the AUSAs have if they'll take a case or not. So I asked him for consent to search his bag. He denies consent. Then I say, would you be willing to just open it and just let me look in it for burglary tools? And when I said that, he goes, Sarge, I got a couple joints. Peace offering. But what do I have now? PC. So now he says, when I start pressuring it, I'm like, all right, man, well, I got to get the weed. He's like, all right, man, listen, I got a little bit of meth. Like I'm going to go, oh, now you're honest. I won't search your bag.
So my partner's going to come over here and pull that bag off you. You got a gun in there as well?
And then as I'm pulling the bag off of him, I got a gun.
Listen, you're not under arrest right now, man, but you're just telling me about a gun and meth and stuff like that. So, all right, just grab that hand. I'm going to get this bag off him and get him in custody. All right.
But what also is happening is, so here's what we got. What do we got? Bolt cutters. Gun. Pry bar. Lock picks. Stuff from cars. Ammunition. He's out committing auto burglaries. And that gun is a stolen gun that he got stealing from cars. So the argument I hear is, oh, you're just messing with people out riding bikes. No, I am messing with violent felons who are out committing auto burglaries at midnight in our community, stealing firearms and driving around with burglary tools. So anybody who says, I can't believe you make bicycle stops, come to the class, go to Craig's class, watch this stuff, and then tell me afterwards that you don't think this protects your community. All right, so the feds are going to go with the gun on this one because he's an extremely violent felon, extremely violent. He's got a second-degree homicide conviction from like 1995 or something out of California. This is what we do. This is why I do it. But now, not to toot the horn, but this is why where it's at. So this is what I'm articulating. So if I just tell you I made a traffic stop on a bicycle for not having a headlight, and then what I get is like, well, how'd you get into his bags? How'd you do this? How'd you do that? How'd you get this? How'd you get that? This is how. This is what I articulated. I'm in a high crime area, particularly crime associated with burglaries and controlled substance possession. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. He's wearing dark clothing. He's got a bag that's slung over the front of him for easy access. When he sees me, he distances from me. As I make the traffic stop for the violation, he slow rolls me on the bicycle. When he gets off the bicycle, he blocks me with the bicycle, subconscious ability to keep me away from him. All right, he's extremely nervous despite being told I'm not issuing any citations. You're not getting any tickets, man. I'm gonna have you out of here any minute, right? And what I say with that is extreme chest rise and fall. The longer I deal with him, the more he starts to panic. The more he's having a hard time controlling that. All right? Rapid breathing, increasing perspiration. The argument is he was riding a bike. No, when he got off that bike, dude had no sweat. Within 5 minutes of conversation, he was dripping sweat off of his face, okay? He's offering unsolicited information to me. I'm not on probation. I don't have warrants. I just got out of jail. Would anybody in this room argue that I don't have reasonable suspicion to believe he's involved in criminal activity above and beyond that of his headlight on his bicycle? That's why we document it. Then he tells me what? I have drugs. First weed, then meth. I have a gun. Now what do I have? Probable cause. Right? But let's do it the opposite way. I make a traffic stop, and I don't have reasonable suspicion after the stop. In this particular case, I make the traffic stop because the registered owner of the vehicle has a warrant for their arrest. I walk up to the vehicle. It is clearly not the registered owner. What must I do? Done. Who thinks that I still have the authority to ask for ID, check driver's license status, check for insurance? Good. The stop is over.
Hello. Does this roll down or no? Is it okay if I open it? Okay. How's it going? It looks like DoorDash. Hey, Sergeant Bigelow, Casper Police Department. The reason why I'm stopping is the registered owner of this vehicle has a suspended driver's license, but you are clearly not the registered owner. So for that reason, I no longer have any reason to detain you, okay? Is it okay if I just check a driver's license real quick, make sure everything's all good to go, and I'll get you out of here?
And she consents. At the start of that stop, I say, you know what? You are clearly not the registered owner. My reasonable suspicion for this stop has now dissipated. And I say it up front. Why lie about it? Hey, I stopped you for this. You are clearly not the registered owner. I no longer have any lawful reason to detain you, so you are free to leave. And then what do? I convert it to a consensual encounter. Would it be okay if I got an ID from you so I can document that I stopped you, so if there's any issues? And she's like, yeah, no problem. Here you go. Why are we afraid to do that? How many people make that stop and go, cool, yeah, my bad, let me get your insurance and your driver's license? A lot of people do that because you get so fixated on the idea that a traffic stop equals ID and insurance that you can't let go of that. If you screw up, was my stop lawful initially? Yes, the registered owner, and I lied, it wasn't a warrant, the registered owner had a suspended driver's license. That's a lawful traffic stop, right? The second it's not the driver, I no longer have reasonable suspicion. I've got to move on. All right, involuntary transportation. When we involuntarily transport somebody from one place to another against their will, are they under arrest? Yes. Can we ever transport somebody from one place to another involuntarily and call it a detention? No. Who in this room has taken people from one place to another without their consent and said that they were just being detained? It was part of the investigation. Lots of people have. Don't do that anymore. That is a de facto arrest. If you move somebody without their consent, it is an arrest, period. Where it used to happen is investigation was to say, I need to talk to this guy. So if you see him, snatch him up, bring him down to the PD. Right? And you'd be like, you'd snag him, you bring him down to the PD, and then they get done and they're like, yeah, I didn't have PC, I just needed to talk to him. So that's a detention, that's an unlawful arrest. We can't be doing that. So we have to let people go, or you ask for consent. Detectives want to talk to you, would you be willing to come down to the police department? I'll give you a ride. And then afterwards, I'll make sure that you get back here, that's consent. We can operate off of consent. All right, so involuntary transportation, unless you have exigency, or like some of the areas where Craig works in, for example, right, extremely high crime gang violence areas, he could justify taking somebody on a stop. If you start to get a big crowd of people coming out that are trying to interfere, you could probably snatch somebody up and move them to a safer location. That would be an exigency that would justify that. Other extreme cases, but I can promise you there's very few reasons in Casper, Wyoming where you would have to transport somebody against their will and call it an exigency. Seek consent. What about questioning occupants? Can we ask occupants of vehicles questions during traffic stops? Yes. Does it create an extension by asking them questions as long as they're the related questions? No. Can we ask unrelated questions? Yes, as long as it doesn't measurably extend the stop. Okay, so how do we do that? There's a few ways to get it done. We have reasonable suspicion. That's the best way. You get reasonable suspicion, you're delaying the stop for a canine, you're waiting for a backup officer, the suspect ran. There's a million reasons why you can have reasonable suspicion to extend the stop and ask questions unrelated to the original reason for the stop, but now you're moving into, say, a DUI investigation, you're asking drunk driving related questions. That's an extension. Okay? But what about waiting for a drug dog? Who's canine in here? Yep. So you guys get called for a dog. Any extension of a stop for a dog without reasonable suspicion or consent is an extension. Does not matter how long it is. So it's determined by the seizure's mission, all right? Not officer safety concerns. So we can do unrelated checks as long as it doesn't extend the stop. So how can we do that, right? Second officers, multitasking, right? There's lots of ways to do it, but we have to be able to do it in a way that makes sense. So inquiries into matters that are unrelated to the stop do not convert a traffic stop into something that's unlawful, but you just have to make sure you're not measurably extending the stop. And I know I'm harping on that, but it's super important. Rodriguez is your guiding case on that. Again, I wish that I had a lot more time to discuss this with you guys, but Rodriguez says it's about time, not topic. I can ask anything I want and do whatever I want as long as I'm not extending the stop. What I am allowed to do as part of that stop is, where are you coming from? Where are you going? Whose vehicle is this? Relationship to the occupants inside the vehicle. Are weapons inside the vehicle? Relationship to the vehicle itself. Those are lawful questions. Okay, so we can do routine questions. We can do rapport de-escalation. We can do travel plans, and we can do breadcrumbs. We could even say, is there anything illegal in this car? Typically, that statement of itself is going to be okay. But when you go, is there any cocaine in this car, any methamphetamine in this car, any marijuana in this car, any illegal guns in this car, any crack cocaine in this car, any child pornography in this car, unless you have a reasonable suspicion to extend it, you can't be asking questions like that. You can ask general, generic breadcrumb questions. When you get intrusive, you start discussing unrelated crimes, you start talking about hunches, or you start making criminal accusations without reasonable suspicion, you extend stops. So we can't be doing that. All right, we can absolutely check driver's license status. We can absolutely check warrants. We can absolutely check paperwork and inspect all of the paperwork related to the traffic stop. That is part of the stop. That is going to be perfectly acceptable, perfectly justifiable. Travel plans, always upheld, especially when those plans put the stop into context. So keep doing that, right? What about asking the passenger questions separate from the driver? Is that okay? I pull the driver out, I talk to the driver, and then I go to the passenger, and I ask the passenger for ID, and I ask the same questions I just asked the driver. Would that be okay? Or would that be an extension? Who thinks extension? Who thinks okay? It's going to be okay. All right? Here's your Wyoming Supreme Court case on that one. Price v. State. It's wonderful. The trooper made a traffic stop, pulled the driver out of the car, sent the driver to his vehicle to do front seat interview. He went to the passenger, asked the passenger for ID, asked the passenger travel plan, standard questions. Passenger answered those questions, took about 30 seconds. Then the trooper went back to his car, sat down, and interviewed the driver and did his normal stop with the driver. Driver gave conflicting travel plans, gave the trooper reasonable suspicion, asked for a drug dog. Drug dog took about 20 minutes to get there. The court upheld the 30-second extension for the questioning because they said that the questioning was standard, routine, allowable questions, and there's no precedent or requirement that the questioning happen at the same time. So as long as the question was lawful, it was okay. So talking to passengers separately from the driver. The biggest thing when you're going to do that is just articulate that sometimes passengers can provide information that puts the stop in context. So absolutely. So this is your Wyoming case, most recent, 2020, that said that talking to passengers and occupants separately is perfectly justifiable. It's okay. All right, asking if they possess weapons is permissible. It's an officer safety component. You can ask everybody on a traffic stop, any weapons in the car? You're going to be just fine on that. A general question, a real quick breadcrumb question. Anything illegal in the car? That's generally going to be okay as well. It's when you start you're going off on tangents, it becomes a problem, all right? So unrelated questions, you can do it with consent. I rarely see this. I stop you for a license plate light, and during that stop I say, hey, would it be okay if I asked you a few questions completely unrelated to this traffic stop? And you say, sure. What did I just get? Consent. What can I do now? Who in here doesn't do that? Everybody's so focused on, I can't extend the stop, I can't extend the stop, I can't extend the stop, that you forget that you could extend the stop if you just got consent. Hey, can I ask you some questions about the lawnmower in the back? Hey, can I ask you some questions about the business you just pulled out of? Yeah, sure, go ahead. They're consenting. Consent is a beautiful thing. You should use it more often. Very, 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 very simple to do. Just ask. Just ask them if it's okay. Right? Can I ask you a few more questions? Upheld. All right? It's not going to be an issue. Asking for consent to a traffic stop, it's absolutely permissible. Who's heard you can't ask somebody for consent without reasonable suspicion while they're detained on a traffic stop? Who's heard that you got to let them go? You got to do the trooper two-step? Who's heard that? It's a common misconception. I hate the Trooper two-step. I don't teach it. I despise it. I think it's a very bad thing. And so does Kansas here recently. Kansas just put an injunction on it. They're not allowing the troopers to do Trooper two-steps anymore, which should be a clue. I can ask for consent during a stop. Hey, is it okay if I search your car from bumper to bumper, everything inside? It's a minor extension. The courts aren't going to have an issue with that. But what if I say, you don't want me to search your car? Why not? Guilty people usually don't give me consent. You're trying to hide something? You sure? Listen, man, it'll take 2 seconds, man to man, right? And you have this big conversation and you sell consent for a minute. Good or bad? Bad, because you're selling consent. You don't want to sell it.
Where are you headed to, man? Home. Where's home?
University of Pier Drive.
Yeah, Anchor Point.
Huh?
I work here at St. Augie's or something.
Okay, your address just still says St. Pete on your license.
I need to update it when I take.
Oh, I gotta update it back there.
Is there weapons holder, any weapons in the vehicle I need to be aware of? No, nothing illegal in the car? Alright, so after I'm done, if I ask to search the vehicle to verify what you're saying is true, you don't mind?
I do mind, but only because I'm a lawyer.
Okay, so you know I consented, that's what I'm asking?
Yeah.
So you have nothing in the vehicle?
I have absolutely nothing in the vehicle.
And you don't mind confirming that by allowing us to look and make sure there's nothing in the vehicle? As you can imagine, we here know all the time that...
Is he selling consent? Yeah, have we gone too far? We can't have conversations like this unless you have reasonable suspicion. We can't be doing that. All right, unavoidable downtime. What would that be? Waiting on returns from dispatch, waiting on certain things to happen. Generally that's going to be it. Is like dispatch is giving you a return, you're doing things while dispatch is waiting to come back with you. All right. You're just waiting on it to occur, and as long as that's happening and it's within the normal scope of your stop and it's not some weird ruse to extend the stop, you can do anything you want during that period. You can ask any question you want, you can do whatever you want, you just can't extend the stop outside of that. Unavoidable downtime is great. I use that quite a bit. I use consent quite a bit because people don't realize what they're consenting to a lot. Hey, can I ask you a few more questions, have nothing to do with the traffic stop? People are like, sure, because they don't want to say no to you. And when they say yes, what have I just done? I can extend the stop, right? People don't typically want to say no to that. So consent is beautiful. Unavoidable downtime's tough, particularly if you work in an area where things are fast. I really hate when you break contact and go back to your car, but that's for a whole nother day. I could talk about that for hours. Okay, what about multitasking? What is multitasking? I'm writing a ticket while I'm also doing, you see troopers do it all the time in their front seat interviews. They're typing tickets, running stuff while also having a conversation. Front seat interviews, okay? Some people are for front seat, some people aren't. The type of people I stop, I don't put in the front seat of my car, typically. But troopers are typically doing higher level interdiction. Those people aren't dangerous like street criminals are dangerous. They're getting paid to transport the dope, and and they know that if that dope gets taken, they will die by the people who put 50 pounds in their car or whatever, right? So you're writing the ticket. You can talk to them. It's not going to be an issue as long as you're multitasking. Now, multitasking doesn't mean who's got digiticket systems, electronic tickets in their cars. How long does it take you for real to write a ticket? 2 minutes, scan it, done. But now all of a sudden the canine's 7 minutes out, so now all of a sudden you're doing this. Right? Is that an extension? Yes, you are doing that on purpose to extend the stop. Do not do stuff like that. Cops are very good at trying to figure out loopholes, and courts aren't stupid. They know what your loophole is. And defense attorneys are also not stupid and will see your loophole and will call you out on it and paddle your ass on the stand and make you look real stupid during your suppression hearing. Okay, so don't do dumb things like, oh, I'm just gonna type one keystroke every 30 seconds and wait for this dog. And then all of a sudden the dog gets here and you're like, ah, perfect, and then you're back to typing, okay? We don't wanna do that. We don't wanna make a mockery of these options, these abilities, okay? As long as they're diligently working. Backup officer is the key. I understand that a lot of people work in areas where you don't have backup officers available all the time. It's just the limiting factor of being in an extremely rural state, all right? But if you have a backup officer, it's great. There's almost no case law associated with backup officers. Why? Because it is the most legally defensible option. Well, Craig is writing tickets or running names. I can be at the car or talking to the occupants, doing anything I want, asking whatever I want, asking all the questions I want, because it's not extending the stop. But once you get reasonable suspicion, you can transition. And you can investigate that for as long as necessary, which is why we go back to that bicycle stop. My report on that bicycle stop was an entire page before I ever even spoke to the guy on the bicycle. And then once I spoke to him, it's another half page. And then once he said he had drugs on him, it's like one more paragraph. Because I don't need anything else after that. But I need to articulate everything else before that. Same concept here, okay? What about this? Stopped for failing to use a turn signal. He interviewed the driver during that about a brand new mower and weed whacker in the back without reasonable suspicion. Good or bad? Bad. You cannot start asking a bunch of questions about stuff unless you have reasonable suspicion or what? Consent or multitasking or backup officer. All right, there's another one here. You talk about canines. Actually, it's towards the end of this. But you can't extend stops for canines even for 5 seconds. Right? There's cases, I was talking to somebody with you. He's like, yeah, usually like I'll be writing the ticket, but when they run the dog, I'll get out and make sure nobody runs over them, and I'll direct traffic. And I'm like, you can't do that. And he's like, well, even an officer safety issue? No, you cannot do that. You have to be moving the stop forward unless you have reasonable suspicion. A 5-second extension will render it an invalid extension. All right, what about identifying passengers? Can we identify passengers in cars? Yes. Are they required to identify themselves? Depends. What must you have? Reasonable suspicion or probable cause, right? So if you make a traffic stop, can you ask for ID? Sure you can. I've got a bunch of cool stuff. Actually, I'm going to talk to Craig about it later. I think you'd like this. I just don't have time for it in here. What if the passenger says, nah, I'm not going to ID? And you don't have reasonable suspicion? Too bad. You're done, right? All right, so in this particular case, a passenger was upset about being pulled over and kept saying, why did you stop us? Why did you stop us? Why did you stop us? Otherwise, had committed no crime. The officer then said, you know what, give me your ID. He refused. They arrested him for interference. Good or bad? Bad. It's not an interference. It's not an interference to say, why did you stop us, right? So the officer was denied qualified immunity. The charge got dismissed, and he got successfully sued. This is near and dear to my heart, controlling passengers. I understand that some people have a strong opinion about this. I also have a strong opinion about this. You can control every single person in a car on a traffic stop during the traffic stop, whether they have committed a crime or not, whether you have reasonable suspicion or not. You own them for the duration of the traffic stop. There is no question about it. It is well established. There is not a single case that exists that says otherwise. So if you believe that passengers are free to leave if they haven't committed a crime, you are wrong. And you are setting yourself up to be injured or killed if you stop the wrong person and allow passengers to manipulate you and move about. Passengers are not free to leave traffic stops, even if they haven't committed a crime, ever, ever. The only thing they're not required to do, if you have no reasonable suspicion or probable cause, is what? Identify themselves, but they must comply with your orders, and they must comply with your orders to move them into certain places. Okay, there are 3 guiding cases on this: Brennan v. California, Maryland v. Wilson, and Pennsylvania v. Mims. All right, and also Arizona v. Johnson covers it as well. But these are your major cases. Any reasonable passenger in a car, when they are pulled over, would believe that police officers are exercising control to the point that the car and the people inside of it are not free to depart. The court is clear on this. All right, Arizona v. Johnson, which isn't a seized passenger case, but verifies for us that passengers are seized, because it specifically says the temporary seizure of the driver and passengers continues and remains reasonable for the duration of the stop. Again, another case telling us that they're not free to leave. All right, Maryland v. Wilson, passengers are seized, and because of that, they can be ordered to get out of the car pending the completion of the stop. The same as Pennsylvania v. Mims lets you do it with the driver. Okay? We do not let passengers or drivers leave stops, walk around, be free. We get very stuck on the idea that simply because they haven't committed a crime, they are somehow free to leave, because it's contrary to what we're being taught. You have to have reasonable suspicion to detain. Traffic stops are different. Passenger gets out of the car, tries to walk away, and she pulls out a gun and shoots at him. She is a passenger. We do not let passengers dictate what they do during traffic stops ever. It will get you killed. I can promise you that. It will get you hurt or killed. We can order any occupant of a vehicle during a traffic stop in or out of the vehicle at any time for any legitimate reason. And legitimate reason is what? Safety. It is automatically standard. I need no additional articulation. Okay, now, having told you how strongly I feel about that, if you stop grandma and grandpa in front of their house and grandma and grandpa are clearly not involved in criminal activity and grandma is saying that she needs to go to the bathroom and she's going to defecate on herself, do we detain grandma and make her crap herself in front of her house? No, we use common sense. When I'm telling you that we control passengers, I am referring to the people that we talked about yesterday and the people I'm talking about today. All right? You pull up and the kid is in the car next to the school and the kid needs to go to school, right? We need to use common sense. So I told you I feel strongly about this, but I also feel strongly, and also from a company perspective, you also need to do the right thing. And the right thing is people who aren't committing crimes and happen to be passengers in cars for legitimate reasons need to leave, let them leave, okay, if they're not going to be a danger to you. And the other thing is if you extend the stop into a big investigation that doesn't involve the passengers, at some point you are going to need to let passengers go. For example, a DUI investigation that turns into a long drawn-out investigation, 30, 45 minutes, and the passenger's like, dude, I'm just trying to go home. I didn't have anything to do with this. Should we probably maybe let them call for a ride and get them out of there? Yes. All right, so you guys understand kind of my Dr. Jekyll, what is that? Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde component of this. Again, the people I'm stopping are not grandma and grandpa parked in front of the house. All right, so when I make traffic stops, those people aren't free to leave, typically speaking. Okay, but again, that's the disclaimer. Just because they're seized under the Fourth Amendment, let's use some good judgment here, all right? Kind of the foundation of Blue to Gold, and also my perception is, do what's legal, but use good judgment. Let's create good case law. Let's not create problems for our agencies and then justify it by, well, just because I can, I should, right? Just because you can doesn't mean you should. So let's do the right thing. What about consent? What about consent to search vehicles? We talked about consent already, but I want to talk about vehicles a little bit. When we're searching a vehicle, we know how to get consent. We already talked about legally how we're going to do it. When you are searching a car on consent, where's the first place you should search? Sort of. My argument on consent is wherever you think the PC's at. Right? So if I've been watching it, like if I make a traffic stop and I see a bag tucked underneath the driver's seat and I get consent to search the car, where do you think I'm going first? The bag under the driver's seat. I'm looking for my probable cause. So if they revoke consent, I already have PC. All right? Whereas if I'm conducting an inventory search of a vehicle, where should I be searching first? Things that show that it's a logical explanation for an inventory search. I shouldn't be going into the bag under the seat. I should be systematically searching for what? Valuables, items that are dangerous, right? Because consent can be withdrawn, you want to get your PC as soon as possible. All right, we already talked about this, so I'm going to push through some of that really fast. I left it in here just for that purpose because I wanted you guys to understand that the same things that apply to traffic stops apply to consent in a house, apply to consent in a hotel room. Traffic stops are just a little bit different. They're a little more dynamic sometimes. Everything's the same. When you're seeking consent, just do the same thing that we talked about before. Be polite, be professional. Say what you mean what you say. Use big boy words. What if they revoke? They have to have the ability to revoke, right? So if you have somebody, can you get consent from somebody who's in handcuffs, under arrest, and in the cage of your vehicle? Could they give consent to search the car? Absolutely they can. 1,000%. I can arrest you, put you in handcuffs, lock you in the cage of my vehicle, and I could still get consent. But what must you be able to do? You must be able to revoke that consent. So there has to be communication between the person in the car. So I saw you shaking your head no. It's a common misconception that somebody who's under arrest can't give consent, right? What is the idea? They're not free to leave. Free to leave has absolutely nothing to do with consent. So if not being free to leave is a component of consent, if being under arrest is a component of consent, then I guess all the DCI guys in the room have screwed up and all their cases are getting thrown out. Right? And I'm not coming down on you, but it's a common misconception that consent and being free to leave have anything to do with each other. It's a very small component. Consent must be what? Voluntary. And voluntary is based on what? totality. Being under arrest is a very small component of consent. But certainly I have people in handcuffs in the back of my police car regularly for other things, maybe a warrant, and I want consent to search the car. I absolutely can get consent from them. Now, do handcuffs in a cage create a little bit of a coercive factor? Maybe. How do I solve that? Hey, I'd like consent to search your car. Yeah, go ahead. And you understand you don't have to give me consent, you can revoke consent? Yeah, man, that's fine, go ahead. See how easy that is? So get it out of your mind that being under arrest has anything to do with whether or not they can give consent. The biggest thing is they have to be able to revoke that consent. There has to be some conversation. Level of intrusion, we talked about that. So just make sure, it's the same thing in a car. It's no different in a car. So an arrest, and here's your case right here. A handcuffed and arrested suspect in the back of a police car was asked for consent to search his car. He was told he had a right to refuse. U.S. v. Watson. What do you think the court said? Good all day. Valid consent. Arrest has nothing to do with consent, but it is commonly associated with it unnecessarily. All right, we already talked about those. You pull over a car, cop says, "Can I search the car?" And the driver says, "Yeah." But the luggage in the back, that belongs to the passenger. Passenger doesn't say anything, cop searches the car and the luggage. Good or bad? Bad in this case. Why? Because it wasn't implied at that point, because do I have to answer that question? No. So silence does not mean yes. Right? So it is clearly the passenger's luggage. The passenger doesn't give consent, you got to avoid the bag. You can't search the luggage. The driver can't consent on that. Now, if the driver had said, yes, you can search the entire car, there was no conversation about luggage and the passenger said nothing, then the luggage would probably be okay, because the cop isn't required to find out exactly who has what and who belongs what. He can rely on the driver's statements about the car and believe that they have common authority over it. All right, so it's not my car, I'm being paid to drive it to New York, but you can go ahead and search it. Good or bad? Good, he's driving the car, he has common authority over the car. If I borrow Commander Waldock's car, he is accepting the fact that I could give consent on his car, right? It's just the nature of the beast, that's how it works. Can I search the car? Yeah, but the passenger, who's also in the car, owns the car, passenger says nothing. Good or bad? Good, because the driver has common authority, unless there's something else that is expressed. If the driver says yes, go ahead, but then the passenger who owns the car says no, then what? You're done. Consent's over, because the driver has common authority and he can refuse it. Now let's say the driver says yes, the passenger says no who owns the car, and then the passenger who said no gets arrested on a warrant and says, yeah, the driver can keep the car, and then once he's gone, the driver says, now you can search the car. Now you're good. Isn't it a tangled tale how's that go? Oh, what a tangled tale or web we weave when at first whatever, those fancy words. But do you see what I'm saying? We have to start applying these factors to what we're doing. Again, it's independent analyzation. I could give you scenario after scenario after scenario, but what it comes down to is you just have to be able to analyze these factors on your own and use common sense. What you ask to search defines the scope. We know that. And the most powerful consent search is drugs. Can I search your car from bumper to bumper, everything in it for controlled substances? That gives me everything, right? Words matter. Search versus peek. Hey, Chief, can I take a quick peek in your cup real quick? I can? I take a quick peek? Cool. Thank you very much. What do we got here? All right. Yeah, we're good. And then I put it back. Was that a peek? No. Did he give me consent to take his cup and search it and manipulate it and walk it around? No. He gave me consent to do what? Peek. So don't say dumb things like, "Oh, just take a quick peek through your car, man," thinking that you're being, I got it all figured out. If I use little crazy words, they give me okay. When you say, "Can I take a peek through your car?" and they say yes, and then you're on body camera or dash camera on your hands and knees, digging underneath seats and moving bags and opening bags, you have not taken a peek. And when you find drugs in that car, what do you think the first thing the defense attorneys are going to say? He said he could peek. He didn't give him permission to put his whole body inside the car and dig. Words matter. Ask for consent to search. Don't ask for consent to peek unless you want to peek. You heard me on that call. I asked for consent to search the bag. He gave me some pushback. I knew he wasn't getting into the bag. So then I said, all right, man, no problem. Would you be willing to unzip it and open it and just let me look inside of it? If he said yes to that, he didn't. He actually just said I got drugs in my bag, so we were good. But if he'd said yes to that and I took the bag, I would have been outside of the scope, right? But if he would have let me look inside of it, I would have seen the burglary tools. I'd have had PC anyways. Because there's no reason you're riding around on a bike at 1 o'clock in the morning with bolt cutters and pry bars and lock picks. Okay? Officer says, can I search your car real quick? I'll get you on your way. And then he spends 15 minutes searching the box or searching the car and opens a speaker box. Good or bad? Bad, because that is, can I search your car real quick and get you on your way? Not a 15-minute search. So stop trying to fluff things up. Stop trying to act as though you're sneaky and getting them to comply through some sort of weird manipulation. Automatically withdrawn when you find what you're looking for. We already talked about that. It's no different here. Anybody recognize old Danny there? Dan Beal. This one's beautiful. I love it for a couple of reasons, all right? Because Dan is, first of all, he's like a shit magnet, right? Anybody knows Dan recently, dude gets into literally everything, and he happens to be in the right place at the right time all the time. But the way he asks this dude for consent, it's just beautiful. Man, you can barely hear that. I wish I had access to the volume. They lock it. They lock the volume in a room full of cops.
Is it playing on your computer?
No, I can hear it over the speaker barely. So what you can't hear is, he's like, so you're suspended? Yeah, how long you been suspended? All right, cool, no problem, man. Is there anything illegal in the car? No, there's nothing. Is it okay if I search your car? And the guy's like, well, I don't really, and then he deflects, and then Dan goes, yeah, cool, man, no problem. Is it okay if I search your car? And the guy's like, yeah, go ahead. Right, it's just this really beautiful little consent that he gets, and the dude's so at ease, you know what I mean? He's just like, yeah, man, go ahead. I wish they could turn it up. And then, of course, when I start talking, I got a loud voice, so you'll be able to hear me in a second. But that's all that conversation is. Hey, it's all cool, man. No big deal. I'm not worried. You got anything in the car? No. Can I search the car? Yeah, go ahead. You're fine. But then, Craig, you'll notice this. So he says yes.
What's your first name?
What's your first name, man? Why did I even get pulled over?
Challenge.
He challenges the stop. And then I ask for consent. Can I search you? Yeah, go ahead, man. What are you on probation for? Methamphetamine. How long have you been clean? 8 months.
Drug test, right? We call probation and do a drug screen. When's the last time you used methamphetamine for real? Okay.
Today.
Okay. So that's what I'm looking for. So you are still actively using controlled substances. Is there any methamphetamine in the car?
There is methamphetamine in the car. Now, why this is important, what I want you to understand is the traffic stop was for something else. Dan, it's not about drugs. It's not about a drug stop, right? So I'm asking this dude questions about drugs, right? But is the stop still being moved forward? Yeah, so I'm asking him questions about drugs. And the way that conversation goes is pretty quiet is, hey, what are you on probation for, man? Methamphetamine? Cool. How long have you been clean? 8 months. Awesome. If I had probation come out here tonight and they did a drug test on you, would it be clean or positive? He goes, I'm not sure. And I'm like, oh, okay. Listen, man to man, let's be honest. When's the last time you used meth? Today. Okay, and do you have meth in the car? Yeah. Where's it at? Oh, it's in my bag. All right, hey, Dan, there's meth in his bag. Right, but it's very nonchalant, right? Is anybody like, where's the drugs at? You know what I mean? It's all very calm, cool, collective, polite. And even after he told me there's meth in the car, we know he's going to jail, but what's my response to him? All right, you know what, man, no big deal. We can deal with that. We can work through that. We'll handle that together. Because how many times does there's a little bit of meth in the bag equal peace offering? I want to continue to be cool. The only time where I'm going to stop, and I'll be nice to him the whole time, but the only time I'm going to stop pretending like I'm a big dumb idiot and I don't care about anything is once I know for a fact we don't have a dead body in the trunk, we don't have 50 pounds of meth in the car, we don't got a AK, stolen AK in the car. Because people give that peace offering. He gave me weed on that bicycle stop. He gave me weed thinking I'd be like, oh, you're a super honest guy. Thanks, man, you're free to go. And then when the weed peace offering didn't work, he said, all right, I got a little meth. And they'd been like, okay, now you're being honest. You're free to go. And then it wasn't until then where he's like, all right, I got a gun, right? And then the burglary tools and all that other. People give peace offerings. So that dude admits to the meth in the car, but I don't know if that's a peace offering or not. So we want to find out later when we're at. My favorite thing with cars, warrantless searches on cars. We've got 6 reasons we can search cars without a warrant. The beautiful thing about cars is you almost never need a warrant to search a car. But again, it doesn't mean you shouldn't get one. We're going to teach foundation first, and then you can build your house on top of that. You want to create additional rules, requirements? I can promise you that if you're investigating a homicide and you've got PC, there's evidence of a homicide in a car, what are we going to get? We're getting a warrant, right? DCI is a great example of it, the investigatory agency of the state of Wyoming, right? How many times are you getting warrants on things you don't necessarily need warrants on? All the time, because it is the better practice. So just because you can doesn't mean you shouldn't, okay? You've got inventories right off the bat, or sorry, that's the 6, but we're going to start with weapons. So we can search a car for weapons, right? Yes. When we conduct a protective sweep of a weapon, or a protective sweep of a vehicle for weapons, what is the requirement for that? Reasonable belief that they are armed and dangerous. That lets us do them, right? We can pat them down for weapons. Who in this room, when you are patting down people on traffic stops for weapons, extend it to the vehicle? Routinely, besides Craig. The same standard to believe that an individual is armed and dangerous is the same standard that applies to the vehicle itself. If I have you pulled over on the side of the road and I pull you out of the car and I believe you are armed and dangerous, and I can support that and justify that, it also supports and justifies the frisk of the vehicle for weapons. If you are patting people down on the side of the road for weapons and there's a potential for them to return to that vehicle, as in they are not in handcuffs going to jail, you should be going into that car and looking for what? Weapons. And where can you look for weapons? Anywhere where a weapon might be. Okay, and it's who's heard lunge, reach, or grasp? The lunge area of the vehicle. That is not an accurate statement. It's the entire interior compartment. Anybody can get to anywhere inside their vehicle, typically speaking, okay? So, accessible areas is what the courts are saying. Accessible areas, can you get to anywhere inside your vehicle? Accessible? Yeah. Under the hood? No. But certainly the interior compartment of your vehicle. All right, but armed and dangerous. Not armed or dangerous. They must be armed and dangerous. We're past, oh, no, we were going to try to turn the volume up for one video, but you guys got it under lock and key. We moved past it. Thanks. All right, if you search while the suspect is handcuffed, we can still do it, but you need to articulate that they could or would have accessed the vehicle. All right, just because they're handcuffed doesn't mean that they can't be released or break free. So you've got a few components of this. Do handcuffed suspects often be released and returned to vehicles? Yeah, all the time. We do it all the time. Okay? Do handcuffs fail? Can people break free? Yes. Okay, that's your justification. That's what you articulate when you do it. I conducted a search of the vehicle for weapons based on my reasonable belief the individual is armed and dangerous for these factors, and due to the fact that there was a potential, they were not under arrest and going to jail, there was a possibility at the end of the investigation they'd return to the vehicle, and in my training experience I know that handcuffs often fail and that suspects can break free. Right? Those are the statements you want to have in your reports when you're extending to the vehicle. Okay? So they had reasonable suspicion he had a handgun. He was away from the vehicle and handcuffed. They still conducted the protective sweep of the vehicle. It was good for those reasons, okay? That's it. Some factors for reasonable suspicion or reasonable belief somebody's armed and dangerous. High crime areas. Your backup is extremely far away. Rural guys, you know what I'm talking about. Officer-suspect ratios. What was the reason for the stop? Aggravated robbery versus license plate light. And what about behaviors? Furtive movements. When you make a traffic stop on a car and everybody inside the car is making furtive movements, do you guys ignore that, or do they start coming out of the car and getting patted down? Furtive movements get you killed. Okay, so you need to take action on that. Often justified pat downs, obviously violent crimes, always. Okay, drug dealers often will get you a pat down. Not necessarily drug possession, but drug dealers. Why, DCI guys? What goes hand in hand with drug distribution? Firearm possession, okay? And that is a very easy thing to articulate. Drug distributors often carry firearms to do what? Protect themselves, protect their drugs. How many times do we find dealers with firearms? All the time. All right, what about an arrest? Search incident to arrest. Can we search a vehicle incident to arrest? Sure we can, for two reasons. One, we can search a vehicle incident to arrest for weapons if, and this is a very rare search, they are arrested, unrestrained, and near the vehicle. Very rarely are you arresting people, leaving them unrestrained, and letting them hang out by the vehicle, okay? Where this is reserved for, and one case on it, is a dude was paralyzed. He had a warrant. They told him, you're under arrest, but they couldn't get him out of, they were waiting to get him out of the vehicle because he was paralyzed. So in the process of doing that, they searched the vehicle while they were figuring out a solution. He was under arrest, unrestrained, in the vehicle, justified the search for weapons, okay? That's a very rare search. You really you're putting yourself in a real bad situation if you're doing that search. So I wouldn't manufacture that. Okay, that's your paralyzed guy. Okay, the other thing is your search incident to arrest for evidence related, right? We understand Gantt. Everybody's familiar with Gantt. If I arrest you for a warrant, I can't search the car for evidence related to the warrant, right? Agreed? But if I arrest you for drug possession, or DUI is a good example. I arrest you for driving under the influence of alcohol. Is it possible there's evidence related to a DUI inside your car? Like what? Receipts, open containers, right? Wristbands from bars. Lots of things that could show that they've been drinking, okay? So absolutely you could search a car incident to arrest for DUI looking for DUI related evidence. All right, but you just have to, all you need is a reasonable belief. This is not a PC standard. If you had PC, then you'd be able to do what on a car? Search it. So this is a reasonable belief standard. Just a reasonable belief that evidence is inside the vehicle. What about DUS? They're suspended driving. Are you going to find anything inside the car that's going to validate their DUS? No, I've heard people say, what about DMV paperwork? No, it's not going to help you. So don't do that. Evidence is pretty easy, pretty self-explanatory. Again, attend any of these classes in full, and I will talk about it, and also I'll make sure you guys have my info so we can discuss about it. Inventories. Is an inventory a search? Yes. Thank you. Who's going to go back and say, I know he said that, but I'm still not calling it a search? Anybody? All right, so inventories are really good. I will give Chief McFeeters here, like the biggest kudos on the planet for the inventory policy he just put out here 8 months ago, something like that, the change in policy. It is the most beautiful, legally defensible inventory policy I've ever read in my entire life, and it gives us so much room to operate under this guidelines. For example, if you arrest somebody at Walmart for shoplifting, and their vehicle's in the parking lot, and on the way out, Walmart says they are trespassed, they can never come back here again. By policy, we can remove that vehicle from Walmart property so as to avoid allowing anybody to come back onto the property and violate their trespass order. And if we do that, what does that give us? An inventory, right? That's the policy. Inventories are heavily governed by policy. Okay, so all of the precedents, all of the Supreme Court precedents that come out say you must follow your agency's policies. A lack of a policy doesn't give you a lot of room. So if you work for an agency that has a minimal inventory policy or doesn't have one at all, get with me. I'll be more than happy to share policies with you. You need to have one if you're doing them. All right, but that's the primary reason that you can do those is your policies. All right, if you have a policy that says you will or you shall inventory and tow vehicles on arrests, then you don't have any reason. Our policy basically says, in a nut, it says that you can tow any vehicle you want as long as it meets these certain standards, and that you can consider these reasons not to tow an inventory. If you don't have discretion, you're fine. All right, but these are the red flags they're looking at. An inventory is a community caretaking function, all right? So they're looking for things like community caretaking is not articulated. You wouldn't have typically towed a vehicle in those cases. The area searched isn't typical. Policies weren't followed, right? That's what they're looking for. So you really want to focus on those things, okay? Make sure you're following your policies. North Dakota, the police towed and inventoried a vehicle on some obscure pretext tow. It was very obvious that this was a pretext tow and that it wasn't founded in any real policy and that it was clear that it was for evidence in North Dakota. In the trunk, they find a dead woman who had raped and murdered and put in the trunk. And what do you think happened? It went to suppression. They lost it in suppression. It went to the North Dakota Supreme Court. North Dakota upheld that it was dismissed, and they did not allow the body to come in because it was an inventory that was not founded on policy or procedure. He literally raped, killed a woman, and they couldn't use the body against him. He got away with it. How would you like to be those cops? I wouldn't want to be those cops. It's an awful scenario. And we know a thing or two about bodies in trunks. All right, if you want to search a vehicle for evidence, you don't have probable cause, you don't have consent, and you have discretion on how you tow, but would not have towed typically in that scenario, what should you do? Let it go. What's that? Be a better cop. Yeah. Don't do it. Let it go. We're letting it go. All right, canine sniffs, super simple. We've got a whole class on canines. We've got a whole day on it. So I'm about to just really push through this. At the end of the day, canine sniffs on exteriors of vehicles are not searches. They can be done anytime. as long as you're not extending the stop. All right? We've got tons of material on canines. If you have any questions, I would encourage you to go online and look at those or attend a class on canine. It reveals no information other than odors. It's not a search. Canines can run around cars. You just can't extend it, okay? You can run a dog around cars in motel parking lots, hotel parking lots, public areas, streets, perfectly acceptable. It's not a search. All right? Not going to be a problem at all. It doesn't require any articulation. You can just do it. But if you run a dog without reasonable suspicion on a traffic stop, the stop has to continue. It cannot be extended for any amount of time. There's a couple of cases here where the officer waited for a backup officer to finish a cite. There was about 2 minutes where he held onto the cite before he gave it to the guy while they ran the dog around the car. Good or bad? Bad. Thrown out. It's an extension. It was unlawfully extended. Another one here. He stopped. He was waiting for dispatch to return information. He ran his dog around the car during that delay. Good or bad? Good. See, we're getting there. We know what we're looking at. Okay. He provided cover for 30 seconds while the dog was being deployed. Good or bad? Bad. Thrown out. It's an unlawful extension. So you see how serious they are about this, guys? What if the dog touches the car without hand or direction? Right now, it's okay in Wyoming, but it's good in Wyoming, it's good under the 10th Circuit, and actually it's good underneath the United States Supreme Court. However, Idaho has recently had an issue with that, where the dog's instinctual touching of the car got thrown out by Idaho Supreme Court, and the United States Supreme Court won't even take the case. Why? Because Idaho can do whatever they want, right? It's like Pennsylvania lost the vehicle exception. You can't search a car on PC in Pennsylvania. The Supreme Court's not going to challenge that because the state is free to do what they want. All right, it increases your rights, right? But instinctual is going to be okay, or if the touching that happens is part of the change in behavior or part of the PC. However, we do need to be very careful with it. It's problematic under Jones, that trespass search, because there is a touching of the vehicle. So really what we're doing now is, well, Idaho is not binding to us here. It certainly should be considered in how we're doing things moving forward. So I would be very cautious, because they're calling that a search in Idaho, which has no bearing on us. It doesn't matter. But do your best to keep dogs off cars. That's really what that's what Idaho is creating now. Dogs shouldn't be touching cars. So if you can avoid that for your canine handlers in the room, or when you go back and reteach this, do your best to keep dogs off cars. Probable cause searches are great. It applies to all vehicles used in transportation. Period. The end, okay? But you've got a few factors here. You must have probable cause. The vehicle cannot be in curtilage. That's what we were talking about, like renting a KOA campground site. Can't be on property, can't be in a front yard. We could go in depth with all that stuff, but that's why I told you, be very cautious. Make sure that your access to that is lawful to justify anything that you do after that. I would be very cautious about it. Certainly you're not doing it with cars and driveways, okay? We're not searching cars and driveways unless you have an exigency, all right? It must be apparently mobile, and apparently mobile just means that it can be driven away, or with the AAA rule, new tires, a battery, some gas would be fine, okay? Would still count. PC is super simple. Curtilage is very simple. Could I search this car with PC on the road? Yeah, all day, right? If I had PC on that car. What about the silver one? I need a warrant. I need a warrant to get onto the curtilage. Crazy thing, you don't need a warrant for the car. You need a warrant for the curtilage, but I would get a warrant for both. Rick was he's like, wait a second. Get a warrant for both if you're getting on the curtilage, okay? Or at the very least, you need a warrant to seize the car and get onto the property to get it, okay? But it's on curtilage, you're gonna need a warrant. Same with this stuff back here, right? I got PC on these, I still need a warrant. I don't have access to it. So that's the important thing, that's that curtilage aspect. What is apparently mobile? Disabled cars, AAA rule, guys. If they need tires, they need gas, they need a battery, it still counts. What if it has no engine, it's up on blocks, no tires, and the frame's all busted up and it's rotted out? Probably not. That's not the AAA rule anymore, okay? And then we can't exceed the scope. If I have probable cause to believe you have a stolen 72-inch TV in your vehicle, where can I search in your vehicle? Where a 72-inch TV would be found. If I have PC to believe that you've got drugs in the car, where can I search? Anywhere there's drugs could be, okay? And it big extreme to little extreme, okay? So a warrantless search based on probable cause is no narrower and no broader than the scope of a search authorized by a search warrant supported by probable cause. The only difference is that the prior approval of the magistrate is waived, so the search is otherwise done like a magistrate would approve. So when you have PC to search a car, you search the car the same as if you had a warrant. Stop limiting yourself or restricting yourself. Okay, but if you search a car or if you do anything without a warrant, who's the onus on? It's on you, right? So you are owning that. If you search without a warrant, you are going to be the one who has to explain why you did what you did, which is fine. In many cases, we can justify that. Just make sure that you can justify it. Man, we did it right at noon. Spot on. I apologize for how fast that went. I really wish that I could have spent more time on stuff. There's a lot of material there. The 2 things you did today technically are a 16-hour course. So you can see that there's 12 hours of material that has been pulled out. I have a lot of information I would love to share with you. I'd love to have you in any classes in Wyoming. I'd love for your agency. All you have to do, if you have an agency that wants it, is reach out to Blue to Gold and get something scheduled, and they will book it. They will handle everything for you, and then typically in Wyoming, I'll get tagged to come teach it. I'm happy to come do it. I love teaching at Wyoming. It's a small community, so I see all kinds of people all the time. Come find me. I will give you my phone number, my email address. I am happy to answer any questions. I have an agency that has empowered me in every way to do this and make other agencies better. I have no problem sharing policies with you. I've got no problem telling you how we're doing things, forms, documents, any trials, tribulations we're dealing with. So I'd love to hear from you. And then we'll be back today for the rest of the class, but search and seizure really is what my passion is. I absolutely love that stuff. So, yeah.